A thank you note from Partial Breakaway Podcast to Johnny Gaudreau. Thank you for the joy you brought to NHL fans around the world with your skills and dedication to the game, and thank you for continuing the legacy of your predecessors and giving hope to the kids that were told they can't make it because they're too small. Because of you, those before you, and those you inspired, small players have a legitimate place in the NHL, and that is something nobody can ever take away from you. Thank you, Johnny Hockey. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Gaudreau family who are living through this tragedy. Rest easy, Johnny and Matthew.
The Partial Breakaway Podcast with your hosts Nick and Junior and producer Vince, bringing you elite fantasy hockey information to help you win your fantasy leagues and win at life.
Episode 47.
Yes, the last part of our team previews.
Last part of our team previews. We are full of energy this time because we're finally starting before 11 p.m.
Look at that. Could even start earlier, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's been something, this last hour and a half.
It's been something, absolutely. Over to my left, I have Mr.
Ouch.
Co-host Junior. To my right, I have producer Vince, and I am Nick, and we are here today to discuss the last four teams of our previews.
Which are
Montreal,
Ottawa
Tampa Bay.
Toronto.
and Toronto. This is going to be a good one.
This is a heavy episode full of information. And as one person told us, whose name is, we can't say his full name because it was a little bit derogatory, but Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Sure. We'll censor it.
Was censored. You guys are not like other Hab fans. And I want to mention that, or other Hab fans on Twitter. And
Correct.
the reason I'm mentioning that is because although we are in Montreal, and although all three of us are fans of the Montreal Canadiens, we feel that we are more realistic, more grounded in our expectations of the team. And so when we go through our preview here, I think that you'll agree with us that we're not really overhyping players, even though we're fans of the team. We're critical, but in a professional way. And I believe that we actually have value to bring here and not just blow smoke up people's rear ends.
Wazoos. So,
Without further ado,
yeah, Nick, how about you start introducing the first team we're going to talk about?
All right, so team one of this episode is the Montreal Canadiens. Last year's standings, 30 wins, 36 losses. We don't talk about overtime losses on this podcast. Last year's power play ranking 27th, not very good. 17.5% conversion rate. Who's in and who's out for this year? Well, the big name is Patrick Laine coming in. And we lose, obviously, Harris, who went the other way in the trade, and Kovacevic, who also left, and we traded him away. And I'm saying we as if it's us, but what
after you just finished
We're in the
saying,
trade room.
yeah. But anyways, okay, little things you're still going to see. But player tiers. So we don't have anybody in the 91-plus points for this team.
oh, come on.
We don't think that anybody on this team right now is that type of producing player. We do have somebody, however, who could possibly reach the 80 to 90 point tier. So we'll start off the show with Nick Suzuki. Junior, since you're actually paying attention and Vince is not, I'll start with you. What do you think about Nick Suzuki?
Nick Suzuki might be one of the most like debated players on the Montreal Canadiens from everyone around the league. I don't think anyone, and I think it's a stigma most two-way centers have, that we can't just expect them to be point per game players because they're two-way centers. But the reality is this kid, he's phenomenal. And he's just getting started. Now, do I think he's going to be a 90-point guy? No. Look, he's coming off a 77-point season in 82 games. Fun fact, 3 consecutive years, 82 games played, 82 games played, 82 games played.
It is definitely a talent to stay healthy that long.
Definitely, especially on a team that's been like destroyed with injuries over those years, right?
Yeah.
He's the only one who managed to stay healthy. So look, he went from 61 points in 2021-2022. He improved that to 66 2022-2023, and in 2023-2024 last season, 77 points in 82 games, 33 goals. I see Nick Suzuki between that range of like 75 to 85 in and out over every season, depending on how many games he plays. I think 85 could be his ceiling. I don't expect to see more than that from him. But man, I love hockey IQ, and he has probably the best on the team. He's hands down the best hockey IQ on this team.
Vince.
Yeah, he'll have. I agree with you, meaning that he'll be in that 85-point range every year. I think he'll have 1 or 2 years where he'll move up into that over 90.
I hope
once his wingers start to develop properly. I feel this year, if Caulfield could stay healthy, Slavkovsky, they looked like they had a great chemistry at the end of the year, especially Slavkovsky racking up all those points in the the later end of the year, matched with Suzuki and Caulfield. So I feel he'll do well. I feel if the power play can go from 27 to, I don't know, maybe 15th.
That's a big jump.
Or even 27 to 20th. Those points are going to come to Suzuki because we don't have a defensive quarterback, even though some people say Lane Hudson is. He's not right now. Okay, Suzuki plays that role. The puck is on his side. When it's on his side, goalie doesn't know whether he's going to shoot it or try to pass it across to Caulfield. Doc being healthy, which we'll talk about later, but Suzuki, listen, 85 points. I think he's an 85-point player. He'll have those seasons once Montreal is in that peak where they're running on like full gears and everybody's healthy and the team is like in 2-3 years, he might have those 1 or 2 seasons where he'll hit the over 90, but or else he's going to be a consistent 85 point player.
So I don't think he's going to be 85 points necessarily this year coming. So I don't know if you guys are alluding to that's what your prediction is. I was saying more point
82.
per game.
Yeah, 82, 80.
80 to 82 this year, and he's going to be turning 26 during this season. So he's really entering his prime now, right? 26, 27, 28, 29, that's where we consider the primes of a player's career. So if he is going to hit that 85, it might be in the next few years. I still say about 82 this year. The power play does run through him, which is important right now because he's the primary person. He's not the shooter necessarily, but he could do it. He's not the guy on the point, but he's constantly the one that's doing the plays in the middle.
He decides where that puck is going.
He does.
He often gets primary assists on the power play.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's right. And the power play should improve. We'll talk about Laney after. But if Laney is there, the power play should improve a bit. So
new coach also.
We'll see. A new coach, Burroughs, was the power play coach, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Last year, he's gone. So maybe there's going to be a new power play coach coming in to try to help out this team.
And look, if Lane Hudson does start the year with the Canadiens, it does add an element to the power play that will improve it because he has a skill set that Matheson or anybody else on this team doesn't have. Okay. And that takes attention away from Suzuki, from Caulfield, from Laine. So we spoke about it, right? When you have a threat, only one threat, it's easy to defend. Now, the second you start showing different threats, it opens the door for a lot of people.
Very good captain for this market. The guy is stoic. He doesn't seem to get rattled by anything. He's not a rah-rah guy, and he's not a
Plays well under
shrinking
pressure.
violet either, right?
Plays well
So,
under pressure.
Plays
So,
well under pressure. I think Nick Suzuki is perfect in his role right now. He is a legitimate number one center. And I think Dom Lucian finally said that, he is a number one center, which his early prognostications were saying that he's getting paid as a number one, but he isn't, right? So he's finally on board with Nick Suzuki as a number one center. I think we could lay that to rest for now.
Yeah.
But he's not a 90-point player. We all agree on that. He's not going to be necessarily a 91-plus point player. So we have him in Tier 2. Tier 3, we have a line mate of his, which is Cole Caulfield. Now, Cole Caulfield is coming off a shoulder surgery, which kind of slowed his season, it seems. And he was a little bit more defensively responsible than he's been in previous seasons. But he didn't put as many points as we were hoping. And is he going to get to that potential? That goal-scoring potential? Or what do you expect? Forget what the people expect. What do you expect?
if Caulfield can give you between 35 and 40 goals a year, I think that's his potential.
35 to 40 goals. Okay.
I do not think he's a 50-goal scorer. Last year, his bread and butter is supposed to be the power play. And last year, we've seen that once teams get tape on other teams' power play system, they work to close it down. And the main thing with Caulfield is he would stay on those boards, wait for that cross pass to come, one-timer on net. But that cross pass was never coming because they were waiting for it. So that's where Suzuki got his goals because of that, right? So I believe Caulfield, and listen, for the Habs fans that are going to say, I don't believe Caulfield played 82 games last year. I think he'll have more games where he plays 68 to 70 games than seasons he plays 82 games. Because
So you think he's going to be entering like loose leaf paper territory?
No, not loose leaf paper. Loose leaf paper is another player we're going to talk about. I feel he's going to he's going to play more 70 game seasons than 82 game seasons because of his size, because of the physicality of the NHL. Even though it's changed from when we started watching the hockey, but the positive side with Caulfield is that I don't feel he's a one-dimensional player anymore. He is not just a goal scorer. He's shown last year that he can also distribute the puck, which will help him out and help his line out.
Well, he's a very young player, right? He's not even 24 yet. So all this is part of development, right? Junior?
Look, I agree. I agree that I don't foresee him being a 50 goal scorer. Look, can it be done over a season? Like, when you have one of those seasons where everything just goes the right way? Maybe, but I think to expect 35 is fair. To assume he should get to 40, I think is also fair. He's got a skill set that allows him to score a lot of goals. So we need him, or Montreal needs him to score a lot of goals. And the better the team gets, the more space he'll get as well. There's a caveat, and you mentioned it, the shoulder injury. I want to see the beginning of next season, because it's like knee injuries and shoulder injuries are similar in the sense that it always takes almost like a really long period of time before you're fully healthy, you get your mechanism back, and everything is as smooth as we expect it to be. So I want to see the beginning of this season. If he can show me the beginning of this season that he looks a lot smoother, because last year, I don't know if you guys remember, at the beginning of the season, he had a hard time stopping the puck on his stick and letting go a shot on the power play. He looked really rusty on the power play. But what worries me is that in the final quarter of the last season, which technically should have been like where his shoulder was the healthiest, right? Because he had a whole season anyhow, or not because he was hit. But yeah, you weren't giving me any expression, so I was like, "Does he get what I'm saying?" Anyways, he only had 2 power play points in the last 21 games, so that's a little worrisome for me. I want to see where that goes. The addition of Linus should be fun, so he's not the only threat now with the shot. So I agree with Vince. 35 to 40 goals. And
okay, so
he's developed his passing as well. So I see why we put him in tier 3.
Okay, so we are a fantasy podcast. Obviously, we're concentrating on points more than anything else. So yes, I agree that 30 next year. I'm hoping to see 35 goals. I'm hoping to see 35 goals, and I think it's going to be very disappointing if he doesn't get there.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page.
I think if he doesn't get to 35 goals next year, it's very disappointing.
We need to
season.
expect 35 goals from him.
Playing 82 games.
Playing 82 games, of course.
On
yes,
pace.
yes.
On pace, yeah.
You know, so I'm not saying that Caulfield's a bust in any way, right? The guy had 314 shots last year. We're talking about one of the people that is elite in quantity of shots that he takes. And that's going to be a big bonus if your league counts shots, right? Like LPHL, we count shots. So
And, I thought you were
go
done.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, speaking of shots, he had his lowest shooting percentage in his career. 8.9 shooting percentage. That's really, really low for a goal scorer like that. So even if we average it out to 12,
And
that
that's,
could go, and he scored 28.
that's where I think the recovery of the injury comes in.
Okay.
Right? Like 9% compared to his average, or the year before he had 16, and the year before that he had 12, right? So I feel that's where you really saw the injury kind of play a factor in that shooting percentage. Now, I always looked at him as a DeBrincat type. Shoot first mentality, constantly in the mix as the primary shooter on the line. It's interesting now that he's added a few more elements to that.
Yeah, because I found DeBrincat was a little bit more complete in terms of his offensive game, whereas Caulfield now seems to be developing that, like you said.
Yeah, he's not there yet. He's not at the Brinkat yet. So we'll see. I mean, 5'8", like Vince said, and I know that you don't think it's important, but injuries do play a role sometimes when you're getting hit by bigger players constantly, and you're targeted by bigger players constantly, right?
The X factor for Caulfield might be, and we'll get to him soon, Patrick Laine. Now, if you can take a bit of that load off Caulfield of being that goal scorer that we need, it might help him just feel a little looser, you know?
Well, you mentioned Laine, so let's segue into Laine. We have him in our tier 4. So, again, Habs fans, I'm sorry, we have him between 60 to 69 points for this year. Let's not forget the player, although he is uber talented, and not just a shooting threat, although his shot is absolutely amazing from distance and from close. He is somebody that hasn't produced in a few years, and he hasn't played relevant hockey in a few years.
He hasn't played a lot of games.
He hasn't played a lot of games, right? So because of that, we are taking a more of a step back approach in the sense of we're projecting him 60 to 69 points. And I know Vince, last episode, I think you said 25 goals.
25
and
goals,
you'd be happy
25
with that?
assists, 50 points.
I'd love to see 30. Personally, I don't know if it's going to happen though. I can't predict. It's so hard to predict somebody that hasn't. He played 18 games last year, 55 the year before that. I'm hoping 30, but
So this is my worry.
why don't you start?
Okay, so this is my worry, is that him and Caulfield play the same position on that power play. They play on that board, waiting for that lateral pass to come and that slap shot to come in. You're not going to see Laney on the blue line playing as the quarterback. You're not going to see him in front of the net. So now, what happens? Who gets cut off? So does this mean that now Caulfield would play a minute 30 seconds of a power play? So now does this mean Caulfield plays 45 seconds, Laney plays the other minute 15, or Caulfield plays a minute, Laney plays the other minute, the second power play, Laney starts the power play, you understand? So this is my worry for...
I personally feel it would be a disservice not to have them both on at the same
Yeah.
time.
But where are you going to put them?
One on one side, one on the other. So the pass could go either way.
And Suzuki,
where's Suzuki?
Suzuki goes to the bumper, maybe?
Bumper or behind the net,
Yeah,
setting
but
them up.
But that's Doc's position behind the net.
No, I don't see Doc on the first power play.
I think 100%.
You're gonna have to
Doc.
choose. You're gonna have to choose.
Between Doc and Laine will have to fight for the first playoff.
I would rather Doc.
power play.
I would rather Doc than Liney on the first power play.
It depends what kind of system they decide to
And
use.
I would not take Suzuki off of that right board. Never in your life
Listen,
do you
you
take him
have-
off of the right
You have to
board.
have different systems. You can't just stick to one because, like you said,
No,
people
but-
watch film.
And,
so you
and
need
don't forget,
to,
it was also 27th ranked power play. There needs to be change.
No, 100%. Well, first thing you need Matheson, as much as we're going to talk about him after. we have no quarterback at the power play, and that bumper role has to be examined to see who's going to play in that bumper role. But to me, you don't put Suzuki in that bumper role. You lose his whole IQ is useless in that bumper role.
No, I think behind the net is exactly where he should be.
One thing I found the power play lacked was movement.
Yeah.
And I feel like Suzuki, oftentimes he got the puck because he would move around and then make his way. Remember, he goes out of the blue line and then he comes back in, gets that pass. And
when they were effective, you saw movement. You saw Suzuki going from behind the net to that wing spot. Mm-hmm. Then you saw Caulfield moving to the other side, sneaking in the back. You saw Matheson sometimes bringing it more in a little bit, right? So when they were successful, I find that's when they were at their most dangerous. The second that they became stagnant, you're exactly correct that they would just stop the passes to Caulfield and that's it.
Yeah.
Power play over.
If we go into last year, we look at how Suzuki's go on the power play. They're one way and one way only. It's from that side boards where he has that perfect shot where he knows where to put it. But for Patrick Laine, listen, I think he needs. I throw him 50 points because I don't think he should be surpassing Caulfield on the power play 1. I don't think he should be surpassing Caulfield on line 1. I think Laine is right now on this team should be a line 2 player. Power play 2, maybe sometimes power play 1 if he gets hot. But it's going to take him time to adapt to a new system. It's not. We've seen it all the time. Players go on new teams. We expect gold, and it's very hard for them to adapt to a new system. So with Laine, it's patience. Nick said it all of the last episode he is 26 years old. Laine is still young. So we just have to be a little patient with him.
yeah, I agree. Like, especially considering what he's coming off of, which is players assistance program and mental health. I don't think you want to put him on line 1 and power play 1 and everything right off the bat. I think you want to kind of like ease him into this new culture, ease him into this new system, and like just relieve a bit of pressure from him now because the fans are going crazy. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone's very excited to have him, but we have to understand that like behind the hockey player, there's a human being, and all that has to kind of like come together. And sometimes it happens in the snap of a finger, but not to everybody. And I think we just need to be realistic and say it could take him a little bit of time. And I agree. If we can get 25 goals, 25 assists from Patrick Laine this year, it's a really good start. And I wouldn't touch the top line because of how successful it was. Why break a chemistry that looked pretty good? When Demidov comes next year, then maybe you could tinker with it a little bit.
Look,
but I just want to give a few stats from Laine, or is that what you were?
No, go ahead.
Laine in the last 3 years is pacing for 74-point seasons, but never played more than like 56 games, right? So it's nice to pace for high amount of points, but you got to play those games. Hopefully that mental health, he gets by it and can stay healthy from that standpoint, but physically as well. He needs to either learn how to play to protect. I don't know. He's got some things that happen where he's going to learn how to play in his body or something, because right now it's not clicking. He's putting himself in positions to keep getting injured. And I think you have to learn that. Yeah.
Okay, that's all interesting. I'm hoping 30-30 this year. I think we have him ranked in the proper spot, tier 4, 60 to 69 points. 30 goals, 30 assists. I think he's coming in this year wanting to prove that he's more than a 30-goal scorer. Mm-hmm. I still think he hits 30 and 30. He said in the interview when he got hired by the Habs that the first interview that he did with the media, he was saying, I want 40. I'm not coming as a 30-goal scorer. I'm coming as a 40, 50-goal scorer. And he does have the talent to do that.
He says, I want to come back as.
Right. So I still think 30 and 30 is exactly where I'm going to have him ranked. When you don't forget that with the mental health issues, identifying that you do have an issue, identifying that you need the help, creating a outlet for people to actually go and get that help, mm-hmm. which him and his fiance have done, and all of this is hoping that he has now reached the level of whether it's maturity, whether it's good place in his life, that all of this is now behind him and he could move forward as a productive, not only player, but human being, right, in life. So it's not easy. It's always a challenge, mental health, and it's something that stays with you and you have to fight it every day.
Every day.
But here's hoping that at least he has that part of his life figured out, and then the rest is all glory and caveat.
Caviar.
Okay, so
Doc.
you guys want to do a board bet? Or are we too close in predictions here for goals? Let's stick to goals.
Everything depends on how many games he plays.
25 plus, 30 plus,
If you want to
35.
do pace,
Pace?
No,
Look, if he plays 82 games, I'm more along what you said, right? The 60 points. If he plays 82 games, he should be at 60 points. All right, so let's skip the board bet because it's too many variables.
There's so
Too
many
many
ways that this
variables.
could go, right?
Yeah.
And it all depends on his health. All depends on his health. But who we're projecting him to land on? Oh, sorry. You mentioned to me before that you don't touch the first line. It's 82 games. 82 games is so long.
No, but to start,
They're
obviously
going to
it's gonna
start him
switch.
off on the second line with Dak, and then if Marty wants to throw things differently and wants to put Slavkovsky down with Doc and put Line up, or the other way around, put Caulfield. Like, there's so many ways that during a year that's 82 freaking games long, you're going to
Injuries
see
come into
all kinds
play.
of combinations.
Yeah.
All kinds of combinations.
And Doc and Slavkovsky actually had some chemistry, so
Correct. And now, speaking about Doc, is he going to come back healthy?
See, he's the loose leaf paper
That you were mentioning before?
because he just doesn't make it through seasons. It's man, I don't know. Doc, I like Doc. I love his size.
I mean, for like talent-wise, we're talking.
He was third overall, if I'm not mistaken. That talent is there.
Yeah, maybe he shouldn't have gone third overall
No,
from
but-
Chicago, but at the same time,
The talent is there, but
the talent is there, and you kind of saw it, right? Like, I'm not talking about last year's 2 games, but the year before that, he had a 54-point pace, but didn't he look like he belonged? Like, he was making passes that I didn't even see.
the second half of that season was very impressive.
The playmaking ability,
He could dominate the game. The problem is, can he stay healthy to dominate enough games?
The sad part, though, is that it was such a stupid freak accident, his injury. Like, it was a hit where none of us expected him to have a torn ACL. You know what I mean? It was such an innocent, like, it looked like nothing. And then, I don't know.
I don't think that's something that it was repeatable necessarily, because it's one of those things where I don't think anybody would have expected to tear an ACL being written on the boards.
But I do
Right.
believe that some people are just more susceptible to that kind of stuff. And
Okay.
he could be one of them. Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm not stating that as a fact. I'm
Soft
just-
tissue injuries, I would agree with you.
He's
Ligaments is...
yeah, it's a little bit different, but
it's,
like
I don't
just,
know. Maybe.
he's a player that if he plays 82 games can hit.
It is a soft tissue injury.
can hit tier 2 in the 80 plus points. He could be a point per game player. The problem is he hasn't stayed healthy, and he's 1, 2, 3, 5 seasons. He hasn't stayed healthy. Most games he played was 70 games with Chicago.
And it was a horrible year for
Yeah,
him.
it was 26
Yeah.
points. So I don't want to compare him to. I feel he's like a Pierre-Luc Dubois, where he has all the assets.
no, don't say that.
No, but
No.
he has all the assets to dominate and to be this elite superstar centerman, and there's always something holding him back. Whether it's mental, whether it's physical. Doc, I feel it's more physical. He just can't stay healthy. So that's why I put him that's why I think in the 60 tier he's there. But even 60 point tier, if he plays 50 games, he ain't hitting 60 points.
Yeah, he has to stay healthy. And
If he doesn't stay healthy, I think this is going to be a big bust for us. It's a big bust because we did pay to get him.
I believe it ended up being
Romanov and,
Frank Nazar. Because we traded Romanov and
And the first.
our first 2 Islanders for their first.
Mm-hmm.
And we traded that pick for Doc, which that pick ended up being Frank Nazar.
Mm.
So we'll see. We'll see. But look, Doc was pacing for 82 points last year.
2 games, 2 points.
2 games, 2 points.
Look, fully.
You had to say it.
I just had to say it. Fully healthy, though, I expect him to easily be in the 60-point range. He showed when he was fully engaged and fully healthy that he could, like Vince said, take over a game. He got involved physically. He's the type of guy when he puts his head down, like you get scared seeing him coming at you as a defenseman. So
I like what they're building in Montreal with the size. You still have your Caulfields that don't have that size, but you're trying to surround that player with people with size.
That's it.
And I don't mind that at all.
And I think, again, the more they're adding slowly to this team, the more it alleviates a bit of pressure off everybody else. And I don't know if maybe Doc felt that a little bit after Suzuki. We didn't really have that number 2 center. Everyone just assumed that Suzuki is an ideal number 2 center. I think he's proved everybody wrong now. But look, if he could stay healthy, the addition of Newhook, Line A, and all that stuff all coming together, healthy, 25 goals, 40 assists, could happen. And he doesn't need power. He's not the type of player that needs power play 1 to get those points either.
I had traded 2 second-round picks to Vince for Kirby Dach.
Well, in a cap league, it's a nice contract.
Which is a nice contract, and that's why I did it. But he's played about 50 games for me in 2 years. So not sure if that's going to come out. And who did you take with those 2 second rounds? I don't know. Do you remember?
We traded you, Doc.
Yes, you did. Yes, you
in
did.
our inaugural season.
Yeah.
So we each had him. How cute.
Yeah, cute. Slavkovsky, another cute. Slavkovsky played 82 games last year, 20 goals, 30 assists. He had that rookie season that he was supposed to have before getting injured in his actual rookie season, which was 2022-2023. 50 points in his sophomore season, which is great. And you kind of saw him really starting to get that confidence. You started seeing him on that first line with Suzuki, looking like he belonged on that first line, winning board battles. One thing that I will say before I throw it to you guys is that I don't know if you've seen his off-season videos. Mm-hmm. This guy trains like a monster. He wants to be a monster on the ice. And from year 1, where I don't know if you remember, but he was getting used to that smaller ice surface. He was getting used to the physicality of the NHL. He looked like a rag doll out there. People were hitting him. He was flying. He was going upside down cartwheels and everything. He did not look good in that first year. But last year, playing 82 games, winning board battles, people trying to hit him, he's not going down. He looked good.
Power forward.
He looked like a power forward, yeah. So Vince, since you're starting pretty much all of them, why don't you go with this one?
Slavkovsky will be the next 50-goal scorer for the Montreal Canadiens.
Whoa!
So remember when I started this episode?
We have a soundbite for a bold take. Hot take.
Yeah.
Remember when I started this episode saying we're not those Hab fans from the internet?
So I'm not saying this year he's going to score 50 goals, but he will be the one who scores the next.
Wow.
He scores 50 goals for the Habs. His first year was very scary for a Habs fan as a number 1 overall pick, and seeing him on the ice, putting himself in vulnerable positions, looking a bit like KK, like Bambi on the ice.
Bambi on skates.
His skates, But then that second season came, and you saw that he took it personally, that what was said about him in the first year. And this guy is a rookie, right? And sophomore, you always say that's the year that people they take a step back, but he took a step forward, and he also played with better players than the first year he was there. So,
not from the beginning.
That's
he
why
he kind of earned that spot slowly, right?
He got most of his the last quarter of the season, if I'm not mistaken, was the hottest time he was. And that's when he was playing Caulfield, Suzuki, power play 1 time.
I just calculated, so I'll jump in to tell you. His second half of the season, he was on pace for 71 points.
So
second half of the season.
So I feel and like you said, the training, and if he comes out and if they give him that opportunity off the bat, I feel he's gonna be a very, very good. Easily could be in the 70 to 79 points. But I do feel that at one point he will be the next person to score 50 goals for the Habs.
I'm really enjoying watching Slavkovsky grow. I'm with Vince, not necessarily with the 50 goals, but I'm with him thinking this guy's gonna be a really, really good player. I think he should be an 82 point player. I think he can be and should be and will be a point per game player when he enters his prime. He's just got all the tools. He's got a great shot. He gets involved physically. He's learning, like what I said with Line earlier, where he has to learn to play with the body type he has. Slavkovsky is finally learning how to play with that body type in this league. It's easy to just say you have to bulk up. No, you have to bulk up, but you have to play a certain style. You have to put yourself in positions where you're not vulnerable all the time and maybe be the first to make contact instead of taking the contact. So Slavkovsky showed extreme strides of improvement. I'm curious to see how he uses that second half of the season where he was pacing 71 points and starts the new season. He also got injured. Was it last season or the season before? His rookie season. So maybe did that lead to a slow start as well? Who knows? But I'm really curious to see. Look, when everything is said and done, Montreal should have a long-term success in terms of making playoffs and contending.
Hopefully. If the rebuild goes well.
If it keeps going this way, they're trending in the right direction. And look,
they won't hit on every player, though.
We'll talk about them later. It's easy to trend in the next direction, and it's another to excel once you're there. And the Ottawa Senators are a perfect example of that.
Jesus, you had to just bring Ottawa into this, did you? Okay.
Slavkovsky is a point per game player, but not next year. I agree where we put him in the 60 to 69.
60 points, I think.
If he stays healthy,
fair.
I think he could be close to 69.
Guys, we have to talk about this. He was 19 years old last year. You're talking about the first teenager since Guy Lafleur to actually put up the amount of points that he put up, and that's impressive in its own right. Yeah. You know, 19 years old, but he looks like Gabe Landeskog out there. Hopefully,
if it could become
right. I mean, doesn't it give you a little bit that vibe? I don't know. Anyways, we'll see. It might be even better. Who knows? Wow. Remember when I said that we're not those half fans from the, and then we're like building up these players. But I think those are the players that.
But it's with merit. We're building them up, not for next year, right? Next year we're all pretty fair with next year.
Yeah, we're pretty fair.
But
I think
projecting what they're going to be. I think we're all on the same page. It's not being homers. It's just based off what we've seen and their development.
Well, Kirby Dach being healthy is going to be a big reason why maybe Laine, maybe Slavkovsky, maybe that power play is going to start improving. Because I think that without Dach, you kind of have a hole still on the lineup. And as much as Newhook looked good in spurts last year, we don't even have him on our 60 to 69 points because we don't think he's going to reach there. And
I think he could get close.
If Dach is injured all year, I think he could get close. But it just feels that second line isn't complete without Dach there. And a healthy Newhook and healthy Dach, a healthy Laine. That's a lot of ifs for a team that, has been injury prone. The entire team has been injury prone.
And that's why you mentioned you have to be realistic. It's easy to say everyone's going to be great, but when you have so many ifs and questions, you have to take that into account when you're doing projections.
A big surprise was exactly who we said is quarterbacking the top power play for now, temporarily, and that's Mike Matheson. So Mike Matheson is another one of these loose leaf papers during his career. But last year he came in and played 82 games for the first time ever. So he played a full 82 games schedule. He got 62 points. We have him in our tier 4 between 60 to 69 to repeat again this year. And I think a big reason for that is because we don't see necessarily him losing that PP1 spot this year.
Exactly.
So as long as he has that PP1 this year, he should kind of go back into that 60-point range.
Or even the first pairing defense. I don't see him losing that.
No, definitely not this year.
So, he showed last year that defensively he could be a liability sometimes. But he showed he can play. There was some highlight goals he had, some of those rushes from his end all the way and stuff like that. But I feel like Listen, people who think that Lane Hudson is going to come here and overthrow Matheson as number one PP guy is just, you're just dreaming. You're dreaming in colors. And listen, you thought Slavkovsky 50 goals was a bold statement, man. Lane Hudson to the AHL this year. That's what has to happen. He shouldn't be touching the NHL, Lane Hudson. That's what I say. But Matheson, like I said, there's no reason not to think he could redo it. And if we think the power play is going to get better, then there's definitely no reason that he shouldn't be hitting 60 goals again.
Junior?
Not 60 goals, sorry, 60 points.
Yeah, I understood. The listener is probably somebody's gonna attack you. You know,
If I went on board to say that Evan Bouchard doubling his goals and doubling his points in a season was unrealistic to expect that again, for him to hit the same pace, I'm not going to be here and say that I expect Matheson to sustain something he doubled from his career. His last year, he had 34 points in 48 games. He was pacing for 58. Okay, he was pacing for 58. Yeah, I didn't realize he didn't play 82 games.
Ooh, Junior.
Yeah, but no, I see it dropping a little bit. I see him more in the 50s than in the 60s, because I do expect, even if it's not to start the season, there's a good chance Hudson could be in the AHL to start the season. But it doesn't mean he's not going to be in the NHL at some point later. And if he comes to the NHL, Lane Hudson, because the Canadians are going to be losing a lot of games in the third period, it's going to be Lane Hudson that's going to be on the ice. It's not going to be Matheson if Lane Hudson's with that team. If you need a goal, it's Lane Hudson. You're not bringing Lane Hudson up and not putting him when you need a goal.
It's a lot of pressure to put while you're fighting for a playoff spot. If that's what
exactly.
the
That's why you don't
fans
bring
actually think they're going to do.
Lane
The
Hudson
start of the season will determine a lot, because if he does make the team, he can't make the team and not have that opportunity.
Oh yeah, for sure, I understand. But here's the fear.
But I do expect Matheson, even with Lane Hudson there, to flirt in the 50s, because he will get more ice time.
Great salary for a 50-point.
Yes. In cap leagues, Matheson is a great look. 25 minutes though is a lot. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll throw it back to you, Nick. It was clear as day that Martin Saint-Louis gave him the green light to push forward.
Oh yeah.
So he was free to play,
Well,
and that showed, and it looked good. It
one
looked really
big
good.
thing that I noticed, and Marty said this as well in one of the interviews, is that, guys, we're doing the drop-off pass, right? Which I hate the drop-off pass.
hate
I
it.
hate it. It always gets picked off on top of it because everybody knows that you're doing it. But they're doing the drop-off pass, and then at one point you see Matheson kind of look back, see the guy is cheating to the drop-off pass. So he says, okay. So he cuts through two defenders and just goes and scores a goal. And goes forward instead of dropping it off. And that's kind of what, Marty expects players to think on their feet. Yeah. And it's cool because I don't think you've ever heard anything like that in Montreal before. Because in Montreal, it was always the
safe,
Claude
safe.
Julien, which is like, okay, play back. Don't take too many risks. Don't try this. Why are you doing this? It's not part of the plan. It's nice to kind of have that breath of fresh air, and I think Matheson has really taken advantage of that, which is nice to see. Lane Hudson is another player that could take advantage of it. I just don't want the Montreal Canadiens to bring him in, and he gets... Because, okay, guys, he played 2 games in the NHL. He had one nice back check. He was also the cause of a goal because he didn't pick up his man in one shift, and people somehow seem to forget that. He's going to make his mistakes, and I don't want him to come in and say that he's just going to be a power play specialist, because then really you're not... Who did you get? Lane Gostisbehere? Like, he's going to be on the team for a couple of years as a power play specialist? I don't want that. I want the guy to be on the team for a long period of time, and that's why I think I agree with Vince. He's better served learning in the AHL, and I know we're all excited. We're all excited to see him in the NHL. I just don't think this is the year for that necessarily.
Listen, I've been a preacher of this. For his development, he's better off in the AHL. Step by step. Logan Mailloux went to the AHL last year, finished top, I think, second with most points by a defenseman. I mean, I think he's earned his spot to try to make this top 6 before Lane Hudson did, just because of what Lane Hudson did in college. College is not the NHL. It's not the AHL. The AHL, he needs the AHL.
He has the talent. to make people miss,
I-
make David Perron look stupid on the ice. He has the talent.
I do not. I am not saying that Lane Hudson is not an NHL defenseman. I don't think he's a number one NHL defenseman, but he could be a second pairing defenseman with offensive talent. But he needs to develop into that, and that's why you can't throw him to the wolves in the NHL.
Look, you mentioned his mistake. Mike Matheson was a minus 24. He made a shitload of mistakes, pardon my language. So, like, we can't... If someone's going to be as offensive as Elaine Hudson, you live with his mistakes. You just live with that. Now, do I think he starts the season in the AHL? Most likely. But he's going to determine that. There's players that... Slavkovsky hasn't seen a game in the AHL. There's players that develop better in the NHL, and there's players that develop better in the NHL. The player and the staff and the development team is going to determine whether Hudson needs the AHL or the NHL. But there's players that could easily develop in the NHL and not in the AHL.
But you just compared a number one overall pick to a number 16th, 17th pick that Hudson was. 10th?
No. Second round. 30,
Second round pick.
36.
It's non-comparable. You can't compare Slavkovsky not going to the
Slavkovsky
AHL.
looked like an NHL player in his first year.
But he was a first rounder.
Would you have put him in the AHL?
100%. But
So
he's
then-
also 6'3".
But he doesn't play 6'3",
But
just
now-
like Cake. He
but
never
now he
played
does.
6'1", 6'2".
Hudson can't play 6'3".
He'll never play
Exactly.
6'3". So then
So
he's not an
making
NHL player to you then.
No, I never. You see, this is you putting words into people's
Wow.
mouth. I see.
You're expecting him to play 6'3".
No, I'm not expecting. You compare Slavkovsky to Hudson and saying, well, they didn't put Slavkovsky
In terms
the
of
AHL.
development.
It's a different development. He needs to learn how to play 5'9" in the NHL.
Did Caulfield play a full season in the AHL?
Okay, stop. So,
Caulfield didn't play a full season in the AHL.
Did I say a full season? I think he should play a full season because I think Logan Mailloux should be playing a full season in the NHL because he proved himself in the AHL.
He could. Who's saying it has to
There's
be
no
Hudson or
space.
Mailloux? They're not done, guys. They're not done. The Habs are not done moving.
There is.
what do you mean?
They have too many bodies. They've got Struble.
Who are you taking out?
They just signed
I don't think
Xhaka.
Struble is a starter necessarily in the NHL right now.
Well, he was last year.
No, he was.
He
because of
might be a
injury
seven
last year.
defenseman.
He was injured. There was injuries last year, which is why Struble had a chance.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see what training camp will what
Yeah,
happens in
training camp
camp.
is going to be very interesting. Exactly. I don't mind. I'm still very excited to see Hudson, and the reason I mentioned Hudson is because he's the only other person that I could see on the power play. Barron had some time on the power play. Yeah. You know, he has a very good shot, Barron. I just don't think he has the vision that a Lane Hudson has, or even a Matheson might have.
He lacks a bit of that hockey IQ.
He lacks a little bit of that IQ, that just seeing the openings, right? The other person was Jacky. Jacky had a great shot on the power play as well.
Tried a few times, but
hey, he scored goals.
Yeah.
He scored goals on the power play last year, and they tried him a few times as well. So that second power play spot is wide open right now, but Lane Hudson, if he does play in the NHL, seems to be the guy that's going to be in there. Logan Mailloux, if he's playing in the NHL, will probably be the other guy that's going to be in there. So we're going to see who it is. Right now, they have Goulet playing on the off wing.
I was going to say, so Gouli, no power play time.
Well,
Not
Goulet's
likely.
playing right now with Matheson, according to how
Daily face-off.
it's not only the daily faceoff though. He did it last year as well. He's playing. Goulet's a left-handed, but he's playing right,
because he's the only guy who can do that. That's left-handed.
and it's because they don't want to put David Savard and Matheson together. They want to put David Savard with a rookie to try to protect that rookie. So if Lane Hudson does make it, he's probably going to be playing with David Savard.
And like Matheson finished 9th in scoring in defenseman. I don't see that happening next year again. Like Junior was saying, it's gonna other defensemen will have more points than him, but I don't see anybody competing for his PP1 right now.
So we have nobody else in the 60 to 69 point range for this team. Do you guys have anybody that you want to say could probably sneak in there? Like a dark horse candidate to hit 60 points this year?
Yeah. Lane Hudson. No, just kidding.
No, I think the only
I'm curious to
realistic
see-
person might be Newhook.
New Hook
Because
or
he hit that 50 already. Maybe he's
this year. I'm curious to see Joshua.
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
I'm
Joshua
curious to see Joshua because I feel New Hook right now is a give me on that second line, but I wouldn't be surprised if they throw in Joshua on that second line once in a while.
Okay,
and see what he can do.
so let's move on to the goalie tandem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is an interesting goalie tandem because
It's not three.
it's not 3 this year.
As far as we know.
Because 3 last year was an absolute disaster. And somehow Detroit is trying to do 4 this year.
5. No, Jack Campbell too.
Jack Campbell, I forgot about that one.
So Talbot, Leon,
So
Kosa.
Sam Montembeault last year had a .903 save percentage, a goals against average of 3.14. Goal save above expected on 5-on-5 was 19th in the league, which is actually very good because we're comparing it to 32 goalies times 2, 64 players in total. So finishing 19th is actually
Not bad. On a team that
not
wasn't
bad.
very good.
On a team that was 5th worst in the league. Caden Primo was the other goalie, and he went on a .910 save percentage, 299 goals against average. Those stats are better than Montembeault's. And goal save above expected on 5-on-5, 29th. So right in the middle of the pack of all of those goalies, including backups and starters. What do we see out of this goalie tandem? Are we repeating the same? Are we in the sense of same stats? Are we thinking there's going to be a few more wins? What's the idea? And I'll start with Junior this time because I started with Vince like 7 times in a row here.
Well, look, Montembeault had 28 quality starts out of 41, and Primo had 11 out of 23. So it's kind of 50-50 in that sense. I kind of like this tandem as a bridge to Fowler. Because at the end of the day, Fowler is going to be the number 1 goalie of this team. Still a few years away. But it's a nice bridge in between them. And
3 to 4 in my opinion.
Yeah. For a full-time position.
For a full-time position in the NHL, yeah.
I think Montembeault... I think the Canadians want to see a bit of progress, so they need more wins. They want to see more wins. They want to compete for a playoff spot. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Kent Hughes on, not the Sick podcast, but Tony Marinau is now on the French radio station.
Yes.
And he had an interview with Kent Hughes, and Kent Hughes said their objective is to be in the mix for a playoff spot. So that should tell you a lot, and it might dictate where some of these young guys play, whether it's AHL or NHL. Anyhow, that being said, Montembeault, I expect him to hit at least 20 wins this year. I think it's a disappointment if he's healthy, if he doesn't hit 20 wins, and I expect 10 from Primo, with hopefully under 3 goals against average.
So you're saying we're going to finish bottom 5 again next year? Because last year we finished 30 wins, 36 losses.
Yeah, but Montembeault 20 to 25, but I didn't want to give an exact amount there.
You said 20. I don't know.
It depends because I don't know.
Look,
mediocre numbers. Look, it's average. They're not going to be stellar goalies, and I think if you go 0G strategy, Montembeault is a good option.
Montembeault will get 60% of the starts, even 70 maybe 65% of the starts. Yeah,
really?
yeah.
You have no faith in Primo.
He
had better stats.
It's not that I have no faith in Primo. I don't think the club has any faith in Primo. So I believe, and especially if Kent Hughes is in the hemisphere of competing for a playoff spot, you're going with Montembeault. You're not going with Primo. I feel Montembeault's goals against average is going to lower because Montreal will be scoring more goals, hopefully, with the players they got. And if they stay healthy.
Goals against average is not about
yes, I know, but if you score more goals, then you play more defensive. If Montreal has been playing
it could give your goalie a bit of confidence too.
Didn't play many games in the lead. Montreal lost a lot of 1-goal games last year.
A lot.
So I think that's where the shift is going to be for them to even attempt to be playoff contenders, is turning those losses into wins. So I don't mind Montembeault. I think he's proven himself that he could play in the NHL. He can be a solid number 1 goalie. Defensively, I still have a lot of questions about Montreal.
Sorry, before you make your take, one thing I forgot to mention, which is very important and changes my projection in wins. They're not playing 3 goalies like we said before. So they get more starts, both of them. And with that, then Montembeault should be closer to 25 wins and Primo closer to 15. Even if they do like a 50-32, which is kind of 60-40, yeah, I mean, 25-15, nice 40 wins. It's a good improvement.
What's your perspective, Nick, on these goaltenders?
Great cap hits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're looking at today's NHL, and you're saying to yourself, "Oh, you could win with pretty much anybody, any goalie," right? Aiden Hill freaking won. Skinner almost won, right? So Georgiev won.
If you ain't first, you
Georgiev-
last.
Georgiev won a bunch of games. He didn't win at all, but right?
Kemper won.
It was Kemper, yeah, that year, exactly. So again, though, we're talking about you don't need to overpay goalies unless you have a carry price, unless you have one of these superstar goalies that could steal games from you every single time. And Montembeault stole a couple of games. Like his goal save above expected was still there at 19th, but his cap hit is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I think that's just my take on it. Both these goalies are going to be
Good Chinu.
closer to maybe like Caden Primo. One thing I'll say about Caden Primo is that at one point he was the heir apparent, and then at another point, oh shoot, maybe he can't play in the NHL, and then all of a sudden now he seems to have settled a little bit.
There's an
So
in-between.
we'll see what happens. It's gonna be fun to see him play more games this year.
Yeah. I feel last year, with the system they went with, Montreal, every goalie lost out on that system.
Yes.
On that
Yeah.
stupid 3-goalie system, I think every goalie lost out on that.
I think we underestimate how much of a difficult situation that is for a goalie.
Top prospects.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, we finally have a superstar. Hopefully. Because he hasn't played an NHL game yet, but
And his name is not Lane Hudson.
he did make the SKA opening night
AHL.
Yeah. So
roster
he won't be with
in
the Habs, ladies and
KHL.
gentlemen. He will
won't-
not be with the Habs this
He
year.
won't be with the Habs this year. There were some rumors flying around that maybe we could buy out his contract. Forget that.
Wishful thinking at best.
Still, so far, the Habs Twitter has exploded with every single game Demidov has played.
Every single time he touched the puck.
Oh, he drank water, guys! people just losing their minds, which is fun.
It's
you know
fun.
what?
We
It's
haven't
fun.
had this in how long, guys?
We
Come on.
haven't had a potential superstar in so long.
I
Let-
think
let
PK
people
Subban was the
rejoice.
last guy. PK Subban was the last guy I remember that brought people out of their seats during his prime when he was skating end to end with a puck and playing and hip checking Marchand into
But
the boards.
Wasn't,
He wasn't a forward.
no, but it wasn't his draft year. Like PK Subban, we realized he was a superstar once he started playing.
Oh
with the-
man,
with
can you
the-
imagine PK Subban with
the
Marty
Habs,
St.
right?
Louis as a coach instead of?
But Demidov
Terrien.
is like Demidov's just drafting him. It was like
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
ooze of talent.
the reaction video is online if any of you wants to see it. That's probably our most watched video, by the way. Demidov did, in fact, it is the most talented player that I think we've had since, even if we're talking forwards, since Kovalev, easily.
Yeah.
So, and I think we're going to have him in his prime. We had Kovalev at the end of his career,
Yeah.
right? So this is going to be a huge, huge player for us. So we have Demidov. He's not coming this year. He's probably going to come next year. And he's looking
Fingers
forward to-
crossed.
He's already started learning French, by the way, on his own, thanks to Andrei Markov's suggestion to him. So it's interesting news. Lane Hudson is the other player that we have as our top prospect. And Lane Hudson, I think Pronman had him as our fifth best prospect because he sees him more as a second pairing defenseman, more of that power play specialist type guy.
Sure, it's not Vince DiBiase who said
It's
that.
very similar to Vince DiBiase's take, yeah.
You could be a second pairing defenseman and still put up first pairing numbers.
So you could tell that
Junior's got a crush
Junior.
on this
It's not only
player.
Junior. He drafted him
Yeah.
in Lama, so he's an owner of the player, right? He owns shares.
He's
of
got
the
a
player.
skill set that if he doesn't put up points, he can't be effective.
No, he has to put up
So,
points.
but
I
there you
agree
go.
with you. He has to put up points. We'll just see what.
It's just second pairing sounds like we're degrading him a little bit.
You go, Nick. Keep on going, Nick. Just don't listen to him. Just
By the
keep on
way,
going.
if my neighbor who spoke to me about Lane Hudson also believes with Junior that he's a number one defenseman.
Oh, whoa.
Future number one.
pairing. Number
Future
one
number one
pairing.
defenseman.
Number one pairing. Not a number one defenseman. There's two different things. Don't drive hate towards me. I've had enough of that crap.
Reinbacher is our other big prospect. And a lot of people were saying that Ryan Backer is only a defensive defenseman. They don't see a lot of offense from him. The Habs actually believe that he has more offense to give, and that's why they drafted him that way and drafted him that high. We'll see how Ryan Backer turns out, but he's going to be fighting this training camp for a spot. I don't know if he's going to play the whole year in AHL instead in Laval, but if it's not Laval, it's going to be the Habs.
Injuries are going to happen. The problem...
He'll see NHL time for sure this year.
The shit part about Ryan Backer is where the Habs drafted him, which is 5th overall. Because unfortunately, we're talking about all these defensemen that have offensive capabilities, while we can only have so many defensemen getting points and being on the first power play. So, as much as offensive capability as Ryan Backer has, he's not going to get 60 points without getting power play 1. You understand? So I feel where the Habs drafted him, he's gonna be a solid defenseman for us. Like,
I think he's going to be a first pairing defenseman for sure.
Yes, paired with someone who has a bit more offense in his game,
Like
Logan
We'll
Mailloux.
No, Ryan Backer and Mayu are both righties, so they're not going to be on the same.
he just didn't want to say Lane Hudson. I'll just mention, I mentioned them before. It was Fowler. I think Fowler's a big time prospect for this team, and I'll say that.
Did he just hijack my team? Or?
Oh yeah, I think he just
No, because we're talking about prospects. So I was going after
he
Vince.
was
It's my
going
turn
one by
after
one.
Vince. Didn't they tell us not to do this on air? Anyhow, no, I think Hage could be what we all expect Doc to be.
Oh yeah,
I see Hage becoming what we expect Doc to be.
if Doc continues his injury, which knock on wood, let's hope he doesn't, right? Because I paid a lot for him. But if Doc continues his injury-prone ways, then you're starting to look at maybe a Hage, maybe a Beck, maybe New Hook being that second-line center, or whoever we draft next year, because you don't know, right? Hage definitely has the talent to be a second-line center if he hits, if he develops properly moving up. You mentioned Fowler already. We're still talking about 3-4 years away, I think, for Fowler.
Yeah.
But he looks like the heir apparent, and maybe part of the reason that they didn't offer too much for Askarov.
A question we will ask next episode.
We'll see. They also have Oliver Kapanen, who looks like a solid player. NHL player.
bottom 6. Yeah,
And you mentioned Roy might play in the top 6 this year.
he's my
like him.
he's the one I'll be looking for this year. Really, I'm really interested to see what he can do. Every time he's been put in a position to succeed, he succeeds. So I think this is as long as he stays healthy, I'm very curious to see what Joshua Roy can give this team.
And although Fowler seems to be the heir apparent right now, a lot of people are forgetting that Dobish is still in the system, and Dobish had a stellar AHL season last year. Let's not forget that Dobish still has the ability to become a number 1 goalie in this league if he continues in this progression.
It's nice to be really excited about Fowler, but let's not rush him into the league like
still years
Buffalo
away.
tried to do a Levi.
Yeah.
And now are sending back and making him develop and taking his time.
Guys, last thing. We're already an hour in the episode.
Bam! Bam, bam!
Do you guys have anything else to add on the Habs before I close out the final thoughts?
They're going to win the cup. No, I'm kidding.
Do they have a number 1 defenseman?
No, they do not.
No, definitely not. And I think they're gonna.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, they're gonna end up in the bottom 6 of the NHL standings again.
Really?
Yeah,
I think they're going to marginally improve, and a big reason for that is because of the 1-goal games, the amount of 1-goal games that they lost last year. I think they win maybe half of those this time, and I still think they're going to be bottom 10 in the league.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but it's going to be fun to see if certain things hit, if people stay healthy, what this team could actually look like a little bit later.
I think they're going to be in the mix for a playoff spot, but they won't have enough juice at the end to make that push, and they're going to drop.
So Dom's model ranked their offseason as the 15th best offseason, which is slightly above dead center. But that didn't count the offseason trade of Line because his article had come out before the Line trade, so maybe it would have skewed things a little bit. I don't know how high he was on Line. The season is dependent on the health of these players. I think that is a mic drop on the Habs. If they stay healthy, maybe Junior's take is right. What are the chances of all of them staying healthy? I think that's where we're coming in as bottom 10 in the league.
I mean, history shows you can't project that they're going to stay healthy, right? So
you can't predict that necessarily,
and
right?
Other teams in their division got better, which we'll talk about.
So talking about other teams in the division, why doesn't Junior take away one of his favorite teams in the NHL? By the way, it's at Junior DiBiase. So Ottawa fans that get mad at us, this is the person that you need to speak to.
No, look, Ottawa fans are frustrated, so they're going to understand where I'm coming from. And the fact is, they got excited, like we're getting excited for the Habs. But if the Habs don't pan out, we're no better than the Ottawa Senators.
So how about you start introducing the Ottawa
So the Ottawa Senators, the team that every year gets better but always fails, had 37 wins and 41 losses, because we don't count overtime losses on this podcast. Power play ranking 23rd, which is, considering who they have, is very low, very bad, 18%. Who's in? David Perron, Michael Amadeo, Noah Gregor, Nick Jensen, and Linus Olmark. Big addition right there. Who's out? Matthew Joseph, Dominic Kubalik, Parker Kelly, Mark Kastelich, Jacob Chirkren, Eric Brandstrom, flop, and Jonas Korpisalo. Thank God. All right, let's go to our player tiers. Tier 1, 91 plus points. We do not have anybody. Is that a shocker? Let's find out. Tier 2, 80 to 90 points. Let's start with the captain. One half of the Kachuk Bros, Brady Kachuk. Nick, since Vince started almost every single one of them on the Montreal Canadiens, you go first here with Brady Kachuk. 80 to 90, fair? Foul? Right?
Yeah, well, the thing about Kachuk is I don't ever see him necessarily being that extremely high point-producing player. And what I mean by that, like, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that he's not going to be necessarily a 90-plus point player year to year consistently, but he brings a lot of other things on the table. And let's not forget, he's 25 years old only, right? He hasn't even reached that peak necessarily. Last year, he had a 75-point pace. He played 81 games. Okay, that's a little bit of a lower year than I'm expecting. But the previous year, 2022-23, he had 83 points in 82 games, point per game. That's very good for Kachuk, and I think that brings a lot of value. Guys, every single year he has more than 240 hits, right? This player's value...
First pick in the Banger League.
This player's value is much more than just points.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's where the captaincy comes in, because like we're talking about 347 hits in 2022, 357 hits in 2023, to go along with 74 plus points in each of those years, and 300. Sorry, what did I say? 240. Shoot.
Man, you lost your train of thought.
No, it's 340 shots on goal, which is elite numbers for shots on goal. 357 shots on goal 2023. 294 hits, 242 hits, 270 hits. Like, the guy is hitting everything that moves. Plus, he's shooting like Cole Caulfield shoots, if not more. And he's playing 19 minutes of ice time. I see him in that 80-point range, 80 to 90 points.
Yeah, I would say 75 to 85 is my range for him. He's a 30-goal scorer, a constant 30-goal scorer. To go to 40, he'll hit 40 once in a while, but I don't see him getting higher than that. He drives the play all the time for his teammates. And the next player we're going to talk about...
He loves talking about the next player.
No, but I'm not going to say his next name, but his name, because I will leave it to Junior. But if if his line mates can play to their ceiling, then his points total will higher. But or else he is a constant 75 to 85 point player. Easy every year, 30 goals.
Top line player, no matter
Yeah.
what team
Yeah.
I think he plays on.
Personally, I see him more.
I think KK is better than him, but
Who?
KK?
Yeah,
Oh my
Jesus, what a terrible draft that was. Anyhow,
Oh my God.
I think he's more in the 75 to 80. I would have put him in the tier 3, but that's just me. But guys, he's relatively healthy player, which is great. And for off of the physicality he has, that's really good to stay healthy like that. And he's a 35 goal scorer easily, in my opinion, year in and year out. So
Top player.
man, I wish we had a Brady Tkachuk. Honestly,
We
could have, we should have. But all right, that was good on Brady Tkachuk. Let's move on to his line mate, who Vince was referring to. Had a subpar season, I think, last year. We expected a little bit more from him. If he spent less time diving and more time producing offense, maybe they'd be in a different spot right now. So let's talk about Tim Stützle, who I'm trying to trade for in every single damn league because I think he's going to be the bounce back player of the year. As much as I'm like criticizing and giving shots here and there, I love this kid. Tim Stützle, Vince, you go first since you wanted to talk about it.
Listen, his shooting percentage,
Fired.
2022, 2023, 90 points. Last year, 70 points. Shooting percentage when he got 90 points was 17.2. Shooting percentage last year was 9.4. So, I mean, we saw he had an off year. Was there something bothering him? Was there a lingering injury that we didn't know about? He's just oozing with talent. I think he's 22, not even, or turning 20.
Oh, he's 20. He is 22 and a half.
5. Yeah. 6.
He's going to hit 23 this season.
And the biggest thing is
What a draft pick. What a draft pick.
It's
Johnny Mavs.
who's going to step up and be able to play number one center on this line. Because ideally, Stützle, they'd like to play him on the left wing, Tkachuk on the right. So who could step up on that team to play center? I know they've been playing Stützle center, but it's a lot of responsibility for a 22-year-old.
Well, there's options. We'll get to them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I don't think he's a 70-point player. I believe he can easily be 80 to 90-point player.
I think eventually he's going to turn into our tier 1.
Yeah.
He will be a tier 1 player on this
yeah.
team. And like for all the crap we give Ottawa fans because we're Habs fans and we like to rub it in.
Hey, you give and you take. Right?
Well, yeah, like the rebuild's been over 5 years in a row for Ottawa. But having said all that, and all jokes aside here, Timmy Stützle is an absolute superstar player. And when he hits his prime, he's going to be in that tier 1 90 points consistently.
I believe
and more. And I do think he will turn into that number one center. The only thing that he's still very young, and I feel like, that face-off percentage of 41%, 46% last
not
year.
bad.
It's not good. It's not
For a
good
22-year-old, though.
for a 22. That's what I'm saying, is that eventually he will be earning that role of number one center based on his all-around play and not just his offensive capability, which he has in spades.
Yeah.
He has offense in spades, right? So I love Timmy Stützle, and I'm like you. I would love to trade for him in every league that I can, because I think this is the last time you could buy semi-low on him before he explodes.
Yeah, and so to your point on face-offs, Brady Tkachuk had 200 face-off wins last year for a left winger, which means he was kind of getting in there with Stützle. Stützle only had 239. So for a natural center, it's not much more, right? But that comes with experience. I think the face-offs, that comes a little later. His season, 2022-2023, when he had 90 points in 78 games, I think that's who the real Stützle will be when it's all said and done.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of showed you a glimpse of that. 39 goals that year, too.
39, yeah. But that's how good he can be, this kid. He's really good. All right, so moving on to Tier 3, because that does it for Tier 2. Tier 3, we have one player who... I'll let you go first, Vince. Drake Batherson. This is an interesting one here at 70 to 79 points. fluctuated a bit in points. Let's see. What do you think here?
I think he's a bit overvalued. One tier too high for my liking. He's proven he can hit 62 in 2022, 2023. Hit 66 last year. He's 26, so he's getting into his prime. But I mean, he's playing 18 minutes, 30 seconds a game. I don't see. I don't see him as a player who's going to hit it in between 70 and 80. I think he fluctuates between 60 and 69. I think that would be a more comfortable tier that I would have him in. And yeah, I mean, is he a goal scorer? Is he an assist guy? I mean, 22 goals, 28 goals, 40 assists, 38 assists. He's a power play guy. If the power play gets going, is he a number one power play guy? I don't know. With the players upcoming, I'm not sure he's that.
Well, I think that I put him in this tier on purpose because I do think that he hits that 70-point mark, 71, 72. And I think that the reason is he has the talent to be a top sixer on this team, which he's proven already. He's already a top sixer. But there's nobody else on this team necessarily other than Claude Giroux. And I feel like the only reason Claude Giroux is still playing top line minutes is because he could jump in for that centers and win a face-off or two. With Josh Norris healthy, if Josh Norris is healthy next year, Batherson, I think, could hit that 70-point mark, and it's going to only help if David Perron is on his left side. So I'm excited for Batherson this season. I think he's a buy low candidate right now because he will be getting at least 5 to 10 points more than he did last year, based on his line mates, his constant production or progress, and he's just hitting his prime now.
For when everything meshes in Ottawa, if ever that happens, Batherson should be a 30-goal, 40-assist player. 70 points, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe, but that's where you should envision Batherson being. And I think if he can be that, then that'll lead to a lot more team success as well. Moving forward to the tier 4, where we have a few maybes. So we'll start with what we think should happen. Let's go with the veteran Claude Giroux. 60 to 69 points, fair prediction. Vince.
I think age is going to catch up to Claude Giroux this year. He's 36. Not sure he can keep up those top 6 minutes. He'll play on the power play because he's just so good on the power play. But I'm not sure he can keep up the 17, 18 minutes per game. I think last year he had
20 minutes on ice.
That's a lot of minutes on ice for him. The only issue is who's going to take his position. I have one player in mind that we're going to talk about after, but right now this is what worries me about Ottawa pushing for playoffs, is that if you're counting on a Giroux to play 20 minutes...
You're right. I don't like Giroux at 20 minutes because I think that it's going to have to start coming down a little bit, and that's another reason why I thought Batherson could move up to that more minutes, time on ice. But let's not kid ourselves. In 22-23, he had 79 points. In 23-24, he had 64 points. He's in the right tier, I think, between 60 to 69 points that he'll finish for the year. Remember that we were talking about Sousa winning or having a winning 200 and something face-off wins? And then you said, well, Brady Tkachuk had about 200 face-off wins as well. So just to give you an idea, the reason why he's playing top-line minutes is because neither of those guys could win face-offs. Giroux had 668 face-off wins compared to those guys. So, there's a strategy there. There's a reason why he's there.
They need someone to isolate.
They need to isolate. Exactly. So if those guys are playing those minutes, unfortunately, Giroux has to be there. Having said that, again, I think 60 to 69 is the proper tier that we have him in. Although he's 36 years old, he is still producing at pretty high clips considering.
His most popular alignment was Brady Tkachuk last year, at least in to start and to end the season. So he fluctuated a bit in lines. How he will be deployed, which line he's on, is going to determine his minutes. It's also a contract year for Claude Giroux. So is he going to try to fight for that one extra contract? I think that comes into play as well. At the end of the day, given the opportunity he's given and his skill set and the power play, I think for Ottawa to succeed, he should be a 60-point player. And I think if he stays healthy, he will be. What about, I don't want to say papier-mâché, but let's go with loose-leaf paper. Is he ever going to get over his shoulder injuries, Josh Norris? And can we expect him to hit 60 to 69 points if he does stay healthy? That being a big if. Nick, you go first here.
It's funny how in the Dauber Prospect Report league that all three of us co-own a team in, Josh Norris just kind of seemed to be like a little bit of a throw-in in our Michkov trade.
Yeah, but because we like his potential, but there's that big question, that asterisk, which is
Huge
his injury,
question mark.
right?
Huge question mark. And we still like his potential, which is why we wanted to get him in return.
Especially at 25 years old.
So we traded, just to give everybody an idea, we traded Gensel away and a couple of other...
the
minor prospect or average prospects.
Is it the goalie from Pittsburgh or the
Murashov?
Goalie Murashov from Pittsburgh with Gensel. And
Anyhow.
we got Michkov, we got
Norris,
and I think we got another player as well. Ethan Gauthier.
Right.
So those are the three players that we got in return for our star player, Gensel, and we felt very good about that trade, and we feel very good about Norris because if he stays healthy, you might have maybe the best center on this team right now.
He might be the one that jumps and takes Giroux's spot on that number one line.
Look,
he's the only other center flirting with 50% face-off wins.
Well, that's it. He's a real center.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to Susla, who they're still bringing in for that. He's been on pace for like 49, 31, 68. So it's a question mark a little bit if he's going to hit that 60 points. If he plays a full season on the second line, I think he does.
It's hard to project because of the injuries, right? But
a little bit of loose leaf paper.
If we would have bypassed the injuries, I think we had him a tier higher probably.
Yeah.
But Vince, what's your take on this? Like, how much do the injuries come into play, or do you put that aside a little bit and just say, you know what, like, can he really be injured again a third consecutive year in a row?
No, the injuries, you have to take injuries, especially with him. I mean, last 3 seasons, 6 games, 8 games, 50 games. I mean, it's a trend. So if you ask me if he plays 82 games, he'll be over 70 points because I feel he'll get the number one line with Kachuk and Stützle. But can he stay healthy? And that's the biggest question. Obviously, we hope he does in our league. And everybody who owns Norris hopes he does. But at some point, is this a trend that's just going to go on for the next 5-6 years for him?
To your point, he spent a lot of, in the 50 games he did play, he spent a lot of time with Brady Tkachuk. So if he can just stay healthy, that's very promising for Josh Norris GMs out there. Definitely not a sell low. Like, keep him at this point and see what happens this year. And if you're a GM, it's a buy low candidate, like someone you might want to consider seeing what the price is and trying to acquire him now that I don't think his value will ever be lower. And if it does get lower, then you don't want him, right? So, all right.
Still risky.
Definitely risky. That's why it's like we consider it a buy, like a throw in a bigger deal type of thing. Okay, so what about, speaking of Josh Norris's injuries, someone who kind of came up and took advantage of that situation, then got suspended for gambling, but has the potential to maybe take over that, at least temporarily. Shane Pinto. Can we see him hitting the 60-point mark, Nick?
Well, he's a real center in the sense that it's his primary and natural position.
Sorry, that's my knee.
You don't need a knee. We're not playing anything anymore.
He was off a 2-year contract at $3.75 million extension.
Yeah, 54-point pace last year. Looking like a player that can maybe flirt with that tier 4 for us, and maybe get to that 60-point with a full season, but opportunity has to be there. And the issue, again, it comes down to Norris. Is Norris going to be the second line center, or is Pinto? Because if Pinto is there, I could see him maybe hitting that 60-point pace. But if he's playing third line minutes, I don't see that happening. I don't think it's a stretch to even say that.
It goes to what you were asking before about Stützle. Is he going to be a center? Is he going to be a winger? If they put him at wing, then Norris and Pinto both have a spot at center.
If Ottawa wants to make the playoffs, he needs to hit 60 points. I believe he's going to be the breakout candidate this year. I think he has something to prove. After last year, he's 23 years old. He's still young. So I feel if Ottawa wants to make the playoffs, he needs to take that next jump next year. And the next jump is at the minimum is the 60 to 69 points.
I think Shane Pinto might have one of the better cap values on this team. At 3.75, like you said, if he hits that 60 to 65 points, I think that's a really good get in cap leagues. And he's still young, so he could develop even more. So definitely someone to pay attention to. I like what you guys said. I agree. What about the newcomer? He's aging, but still finds a way to get in there with his points, especially on the power play. Do we think David Perron could hit the 60? Personally, I don't think he hits 60, even though I think he could be very serviceable for this team. Where do you guys stand? Vince, you've owned him in a few leagues.
No, I think if you own David Perron, you should have been dropping him 2 years ago. I don't think there's space on the power play one for him on this team.
Well, depending how big your league is, too,
Yeah.
right?
But I don't think he's a power play one guy on this team. I think there's better players than him on this team. I think he's a serviceable veteran that can show a young team what it is to win because he's been there. So I think that's the reason they brought him in. And you know what? He gives you that 40 to 45 points. You take it and run.
So in the last 2 years with Detroit, he played almost full seasons. He had one full season in 22-23, and he played 76 games in 23-24, and he was pacing mid-50s on average. So I don't see that 70, 85 point player, and that's why I'm not excited to see him in tier 4, 60 to 69 points. I don't think that he reaches that. But a 55-point player could be fantasy relevant on some formats, right? In Lama, for example, that could be your last forward, maybe.
Reserve forward.
Your reserve forward or somebody that you bring in case of injuries. So, again, depending on your league and how big your league is and how deep it is, maybe Perron is that type. In most of our leagues, he wouldn't be rostered.
I can see why someone might think of him as a dart throw at the end of a draft, given that he should be getting line 2 opportunity and PP2. Personally, I would stay away from a fantasy perspective, even though, like I said, I think he can be serviceable for the Ottawa Senators. All right, so the power play defenseman, I think there's at least 2 to speak of here. And we'll go with the obvious one. I think, hands down, he should have power play 1, but do you guys disagree? Jake Sanderson? Vince, you go first. You own him. I want to hear your take first. Jake Sanderson.
Yeah, he should definitely be power play 1, number 1 defenseman or number 1 pairing on the Ottawa Senators. He's their future. Chicherim got 41 points last year, so those 41 points have to go somewhere. I think they traded him away because they believe Sanderson's ready to take the next step. Is the next step like Bouchard, 80 points? No, I do not believe that's his next step. But I do believe his next step is between the 50 to 55 points. Taking charge of that defense, taking charge of that power play 1. And like I said, if we're all looking at Ottawa trending upwards and towards a playoff spot, that's where he has to hit for it to be relevant for Ottawa.
Yeah, I mean, already a very valuable defenseman, already a defenseman that plays 23 minutes of ice time at 22 years old. That's very, very good for Ottawa, and they've hit on, I think, a future top pairing defenseman. Yeah. I just don't know if he's going to be point producing in the sense of like a 60-point producer, because that's very rare, right? That would be top 10 in the NHL. 60 points for
like
defenseman.
Matheson was at 62 and he was ninth, and then I think the guy after that was 58.
Exactly. So I just see him in his prime when he hits as a 50-point defenseman, which is still going to be very valuable. 10 goals, 40 assists year after year, maybe 15 goals 1 year, but that's about it.
He had 52% of the power play time last year, and I think a lot of that came in after the first quarter of the season. Shabbat had 48. So it was almost a 50-50. I see Jake Sanderson getting up to maybe 60% easily this year. Personally, I think Jake Sanderson could be a 60-point defenseman in this league, if not a little bit more.
In his prime, I think so too.
Especially with the team that they're building, if they can all stay healthy and it comes together, that power play should be amongst the best. Why it's not, I mean, they're gonna have to figure it out. But
do you guys own Jake Sanderson?
Vince does. I don't.
Okay, perfect.
I think he can be 60 to 65 point defenseman in this league. Okay, so that does it for our power play defenseman.
Is he number one defenseman?
Jake Sanderson? No, not yet. But I think he can make his way there over time.
All right.
All right, goalie tandems. This was the
we didn't
biggest.
Even speak about Shabbat.
Well, we kind of did it hand in hand. But sure, let's add on. You guys want to add something on Shabbat?
I think they tried to trade Shabbat and his salary was just not tradable, so they had to trade Chichim.
Okay.
That's my say. I think they overestimate Shabbat's talent when they give him that contract.
You want to add something, or?
I think I agree. He is overpaid for what he provides. He's hit his prime. He's in his prime now. He's 27 years old. Shabbat. He had 30 points last year, 48-point pace. He has never played 82 games ever. So that's where maybe it's something that comes into play, right? Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate because he did have point paces much higher than Jake Sanderson so far. He is in that 50-point range on pace, though, right? He's never actually hit. He hit 55 once in 2018. That was a long time ago.
I think that's when he got his contract. After that.
Yeah. So I mean, but he's been showing that his point paces are close to 50 points per game, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
I just $8 million is it's tough to swallow for that. But he plays 23 minutes of ice time. Right?
They taxed him a lot when he wasn't ready for it. He was playing 26 minutes a game, 3 years in a row, 26 minutes a game. I don't think he was ready for that. And that goes to the fact that they didn't have anybody to alleviate that from him. And as they're building this team, that's why I found it strange that they traded Chirkrin. Maybe there's something we don't know. But I find with Chirkrin and Sanderson, it created a nice little depth where, like, you don't have to play him 26, 25, 24 minutes. Maybe you could bring it down to 22. And he could be that much more important to you. But from a fantasy perspective, 50 points, I think, is capping him.
Okay.
All right, now to the news of the summer for the Ottawa Senators.
Last year, they got a goalie.
Yeah, last year they got Korpisalo. We thought he was going to change the ways there, but I mean, Linus Olmark has a bit more of a pedigree.
Getting rid of Korpisalo.
Getting rid of Korpisalo actually is probably the success, the win. Yeah. Okay, so Linus Olmark save percentage last year with the Boston Bruins of .915, amongst the best in the league. Goals against average 2.57. Goals save above expected at 5-on-5. He ranked 4th overall. That's minimum games played of 20. Anton Forsberg save percentage of .890. Goals against average 3.21. Goals save above expected at 5-on-5, 58th in the league. So safe to say Anton Forsberg, just like Korpisalo, didn't have a great year last year for the Senators. Is Allmark the saving grace for this franchise? And will he sign an extension? Nick?
I'm not going to predict whether he signs an extension or not because
My bad.
Honestly, it could go any way. But personally speaking, I don't think he does. I think he hits UFA and he gets paid. And the big reason, in order for him to get paid, though, he has to produce. Mm-hmm. And producing on Ottawa, we've seen they have a very young team. And with a young team, sometimes comes a little bit less defensive presence in front of him. And that's what scares me with his numbers. I feel like his numbers are going to take a dip, but he's still a good enough goalie that even if his numbers take a dip, I don't think they're going to go totally in the trash. Like, we're going to see not a 915 save percentage, but we might see a 905, 907 save percentage. Still might be better than anything that Ottawa's had in a long time. He's still going to have a goals against average maybe below 3, but it's not going to be 2.5. And his goal save above expected, we'll see what that turns into. But for me, Allmark is the saving grace, and he's touted as the saving grace of this team for this offseason. He is the reason why this offseason looks great for Ottawa. And is it enough for them to make the playoffs? We'll talk about that later. But definitely something for Ottawa fans to be very excited about.
I think Allmark's success next year or this year is based on Forsberg's success. Because if Forsberg gives the same numbers that he gave this year, Allmark will be playing 60 to 65 games, which I personally think is a lot for him.
He's never played more than 49.
Yeah. I think if they can keep Allmark in the 50-game range and Forsberg can get that 30 to 32 games but be decent, I think they'll have something going in Ottawa. But like Nick said, it's that defense is young. I think Travis Green is their new coach, if I'm not mistaken, right? He wasn't there last year? Or
Did he come mid-season?
Did he come mid-season last year?
I think he came mid-season last year. I'll double check that while you guys continue your takes.
So if he came in mid-season, so at least he already implemented his program into them. So this year should just be a refresh. So they should be able to play. But Ottawa's playoffs hopes go with those two goalies. And in my prediction, if Allmark plays more than 50 games, it's not a good sign for Ottawa.
It looks like he might have been hired in May.
Yeah, because wasn't it when...
Well, at one point they had Jacques Martin.
Oh yeah, that Jacques Martin as the intern.
As an intern.
Because the guy from Montreal bought the team.
Yeah.
That's it. So yeah, so Travis Green brings in a new system. We'll see how it goes. But I'll still stick to if Allmark plays 50 games, Ottawa makes the playoffs.
The problem with, and I don't know if you guys agree, but when there's not stable ownership for a long time somewhere, and there's rumors about ownership and always being an issue, and like the team kind of has too much going on as noise in the background, that they sometimes don't compete or sometimes don't compete to the level that they're expected to. And for a very young team, which Ottawa was a very young team and still is a pretty young team, having that noise in the background, I think, did hurt them for a long time, which is why maybe they're just not, because they drafted pretty well. Like Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, we've talked about.
Yeah.
You know, even Norris, Pinto, like
Sanderson,
Jake Sanderson.
Traded for Norris. They got Norris in the Eric Carlson deal.
That's right. Sorry, he wasn't drafted. But yeah, like these are all very positive ways to run a franchise, except that your ownership was kind of always in the news.
The ownership stability is going to help, especially now there's a new talk of new arena and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing.
Which
the
is
downtown arena,
which is
possible.
The arena's
positive
like completely
right now.
on the outside.
So listen, I'm cheering for Ottawa to make the playoffs. I think this is the team this is the year where they need to take that next step.
At least they have to be close.
Yeah, at least like if they don't make it, it's because of the last 3 games that, but they have to be in the hunt all year long.
I would have loved for them to add like a Brad Pesci type.
Yeah.
I feel like their defense is missing something like that. I mean, that's going to be a question for Allmark going into the season. Is he's got Jake Sanderson, Artem Zub, Thomas Chabot, Nick Jensen, who's not bad, Tyler Clevin, and Jacob Bernard Docker. Like that's their top 6 possibly. I might be forgetting someone who's either a 7th or maybe a rookie coming in, but Linus Ullmark is going from a nicely structured team to this this top 6 defensive pairs. So, but he's also, despite even his time in Buffalo where they didn't have great teams, always managed to have a save percentage over 900. So he's still a good goalie. This is going to be very interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to their prospects. There might not be much to talk about here, and that's only because, and we repeat it often on this podcast, they're already in the NHL and they're still young, right? But let me name you a few players, and you guys tell me who stands out here. I'm sure the first one's going to be a topic of discussion. So they've got Yakimchuk, who they drafted this year in the first round, Sogard, Ostapchuk, Mary Leinen, Holiday, Clevin, who we saw there in the third pairings, projected by Daily Faceoff, Bourgault, who they acquired, I think, from the Edmonton Oilers, and possibly a flop, Boucher. A lot of talk about Boucher the year they drafted him, and not so much anymore.
Yeah, I think Ottawa is a very passionate fan base, and they tend to overhype or try to overhype their players. And they've had good drafts in the past, right? So, but Boucher is kind of looking more of a third or fourth liner. I don't see him as a top 6 player necessarily. And even Bourgault that they did acquire, I don't see him as a top 6 necessarily. Clevin will play this year, so that's going to be interesting. Yakimchuk is the star here, and
he was one of your.
He was one of my crushes for being drafted as a possible top pairing defenseman in the future. We'll see.
Nick had him ranked, I believe, top 12 in his 12. Prospect fantasy hockey rankings for this draft.
That's right. And Matt Sogard, which I know Vince owns and is hoping for a future in the NHL.
Is getting very slim. I mean, when you can't beat out Korpisalo for a starting position, it's getting,
poor guy. He takes a beating on this podcast.
No, but it's getting so regardless. I own him out. But and goalies sometimes develop later than players and defensemen. So, but it's slimming. He needs to have an outstanding AHL season next year to even consider anything else.
Before final thoughts, anything you guys want to say to?
No, I think
Ottawa?
I thought we were going to bash them a lot more than we did.
Same. All right, so final thoughts and predictions. Well, Dom Lucian had him 10th best in the offseason. The Allmark for him was a home run. The Chikrin loss was pretty big. Brandstrom, they didn't get anything for him, so that always sucks and stings a little bit. But they couldn't really get much for him considering he hadn't really produced up to expectation. Matthew Joseph, better than Amadio, and I don't know why they settled for Amadio. They could have kept Matthew Joseph. Perron is fine, but Dom wishes they put down the phone after the Allmark trade. So basically, that was their home run, and then they just slowly picked away at the success of that trade.
Losing, I don't understand how you gain an Allmark and then you throw away a Chikrin, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Maybe there's things we don't know, but look, all in all, I think we're hoping and expecting Ottawa to improve off last year.
Yes, I
given
think so.
Everyone stays healthy. It'll still be tight to make the playoffs, though. I think they're definitely going to be in the mix. All right, moving on to our third team. Vince, take it over.
Oh, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who were back-to-back Stanley Cup champions at one point, over the cap $18 million, but still won the cup. So, last year's standings, Tampa Bay 45 wins, 29 losses. Their power play, first in the league, no kidding with the players they had, 28.6% on the power play. That is ridiculous. Who's in and who's out? Who's in? Oh, we spoke about him before. Jake Gensel, Cam Atkinson. Man. Is that Zemgus? Zemgus?
Is that Gergensen?
Gergensen's. Ryan McDonough and JJ Moser. Who's out? Man, the Hall of Famer Steven Stamkos. Anthony Duclair, the journeyman. Tanner Janot, who, well, let's just say not much in the NHL. Young prospect defenseman who's paper mache a bit, Mikhail Sergachev, and Matt Dumba, who just likes to throw the body around. So
I don't know if Sergachev is a prospect anymore.
Yeah,
He's been in the league year in year out playing top.
he's maybe a loose leaf paper, but not a
Maybe a loose leaf paper, but he's not a prospect.
How many games has he played?
He's playing top pairing every
stop
year.
it. We're gonna check this out after. Okay.
Oh my God.
Tell me, Junior, how many games has he played, Sergachev?
I'm on it. Just give me a few seconds. Yeah, caught me off guard there.
Just type his name in the search bar.
I got him. He's not on Tampa anymore. I can't check.
Okay, so he played 79, 78,
Just look at the total.
475 games.
Okay, it's 275 more than the 200 mark.
Jesus Christ.
That's like 3 seasons.
All right, so
But it does feel like he's still new in the league because Hedman took so much of that.
tier 1, 91 points, 91 plus points in projections. It's because Nick owns him in the league, no?
No.
91
22
Plus
points
points.
every 22 minutes of ice time per game.
I don't think we have to spend much time on these two players, but we'll start. Kucherov, do you guys see any decline in this player, or do we just see him in tier 1?
No, definitely tier 1. Can you hit 144 again? I'm not sure, but 120 is very fair to project for Kucherov.
I have him at 125 this year.
My man.
Yeah.
My man.
Yep.
Shooting percentage stays fair. Shots on goal last year, crazy. 306. Has never hit over 300 shots on goal. Obviously, not always healthy, but no, look, we say it all the time.
Most minutes he's ever played, by the way,
Yeah.
as time on ice. 2140. The most he ever did before that was the year before that at 20.08.
I'm curious to see what he does with. I mean, they lost Stamkos, but they gained the Gensel, so that's a bit more speed. I'm curious to see how that works. If he did 144,
Well,
And-
listen, I'm not gonna spend time on Kucherov. He's above and over everyone.
He's top 5 in
top
every
5
league.
in points, yeah, for sure.
So his line mate interests me more. Braden Point last year, I think he hit 90 points. Can he make that push to 91 and plus for next year or this year? Nick.
I was waiting to see who you wanted to speak. Look, he's done 90 last year. He did 95 the year before that. I think he continues. And I don't see why not. He played the most time on ice that he ever did. 20 minutes of ice time for him. Yes, he loses Stamkos, but he gains Gensel. I just don't see this player necessarily losing too much points here. I think he's still in that 90 range.
Back-to-back seasons with over 20% in the shooting percentage.
Yeah.
That's wild. That is wild. 32 power play points this last season, 30 the year before. I don't see any of that changing. As long as he stays healthy, he should be a 90-plus point player.
A third-round pick, by the way.
Because why?
79th overall.
Why did he drop?
5'10".
They're not all like him. They're not all like him. But I'm just saying. Sometimes,
there's like 300 5'10s every year in the draft. But he came out of the pile. He was a needle in a haystack.
But more and more you see them drafted
Actually,
a little higher these days.
I actually remember that draft because I really wanted Montreal to draft Point, and we had the opportunity to do so, and I think we took...
don't even say it.
I don't even want to say it.
Yeah, don't even say
We're
it.
better off not saying it.
Yeah.
No, that's two players very easy to talk about. Not much else to say. They're elite at what they do, and they're gonna stay elite.
The next player who's always been touted to be said that he only puts up the points he did because he played with the one and only great Sidney Crosby. Jake Gensel, can he adapt to the point Kucherov play system to make it into tier 2, which is between 80 and 90 points? Junior.
I think so. I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd say yes. You're going to like a potent offense. He was doing all that on a terrible power play. He's going on one of the best power plays in the league on top of that. Definitely a 30 goal scorer. I see him being a point per game player easily and should hit 90 points. He should even hit 90 points on this team. Again, health is a bit of an issue. 67 games played last year. I mean, mind you, 78, 76 the year before, not too shabby. But look, if he stays healthy, he's getting really close to 90 points this year. I really believe that, and especially with the power play, 22 power play points, that could go up to 30.
So on pace, I see him hitting 90 points again on pace. I don't know. I can't predict whether he's going to stay healthy or not. But between Pittsburgh and Carolina, he can consistently put up the points. And he wasn't never reliant or dependent on Crosby, because even when he wasn't playing on Crosby's lines, he was still driving play on his own line. He went into a different situation in Carolina, and all of a sudden he's still producing in Carolina. So he kind of seems to be a play driver on his own right. And I'm predicting 35 goals this year, and I'm predicting close to that 90 points.
Yeah, in the final quarter of last year with Carolina, he had 25 points in 17 games.
A brand new team that he's never played on before, and all of a sudden he's putting up points like that. Like you can't take anything away from Gensel on his own.
Okay, Tier 3, the ageless wonder, Victor Hedman, 33 years old.
Number one defenseman.
Dun, dun, dun. 33 years old, Victor Hedman. Last year, 75 points. Is this repeatable, Nick?
Absolutely. I think Hedman is a beast.
Wow.
I think he is the type of player that, regardless of his age, which is his 34 age season in the league this year, he doesn't seem to be slowing down. He played 24, almost 25 minutes last year, and he put up his best point pace in a few years. So 80-point pace last year. Injuries played a role at some point, and we thought Sergachev was going to take over that number one spot, but Hedman kind of beat him down with a stick.
Literally, almost.
He literally took back that power play one spot. And I think this is a big reason why they were comfortable in getting rid of Sergachev, because Hedman is so freaking good, even at his age. 6'7", this guy's a monster, but it's so rare to have a player at this size producing like this. It's insane. And that's why I think he's a unicorn. He's a number one defenseman by far.
Junior.
Yeah, he's probably the staple of what you want a number one defenseman to be in an ideal world. A point per game is rough for me. We have him 70 to 79. I like that better. In a perfect situation, he should see a little bit less ice time, gradually lowering that a little bit as he gets older. It surprised me a little bit because Sergachev could have alleviated, but in a cap world, decisions like that have to be made, and it's hard to move on from Hedman. It's a little easier to move on from Sergachev, right? But I like what they did. They brought in McDonough, who was a good vet who could alleviate a little bit, and JJ Moser is nothing to sneeze at. We'll talk to him about later. But yeah, Hedman, 79 points is almost a guarantee if he stays healthy. Very safe shot percentage, averages over 2 shots on goal a game.
Nobody on that team could play power play one instead of him.
Guys, he's been a negative player twice in his career. With all the ice time he gets, that's very impressive. And it was in the first 3 years of his career.
I think that McDonough trade back to Tampa is just to alleviate some of those minutes from Hedman because of his age. But I wouldn't think he would be over 70, but he hasn't proven that he's slowing down. So why would you go against the odds? So listen, number one defenseman, he's the quarterback of that power play. He drives that power play. Why that power play was number one was because he was back there. So
last year we probably said he started his demise, right? His decline, because he paced for 53 points, and then he comes back with 80 points.
Yeah, of course.
So now he has like 80 points plus in 2 of his last 3 seasons.
But you have to remember the year before that, they went to 2 long Stanley Cup runs. So it's like it catches up to you once in a while.
Yeah.
The other player we have in that tier 3, who I feel is an interesting player, 26 years old, Brandon Hagel, 75 points last year. If I'm not mistaken, he was traded on air last year at the Partial Breakaway podcast.
Nick and I pulled the trigger on the deal.
Nick, you acquired him, didn't you?
And then traded.
I traded him away this offseason.
Okay, so can you repeat that that point streak? Can he stay in that tier between?
So he just hit his prime. He's 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is telling us that he should be able to repeat. He had his lowest shooting percentage in the last 3 years. He had it this year that just passed. And he still put up 26 goals, 49 assists, 75 points in 82 games. This player is very, very good. And he is the perfect player for you to buy low on. I think I sold him because of cap restraints and not because I actually wanted to get rid of him.
You want to go over that trade? You got
I
Patrick Kane?
No, I got Dursey in a second.
Oh.
For Hagel, which I might have to drop Dursey because I can't afford him anymore. Anyways, the fact of the matter is, though, is he played 19 minutes of ice time last year. He hasn't been in the league that long, even though he's 26 years old. This is going to be his fifth season in the league. So I feel like he is the fifth player on that five-man power play. And because he's the fifth player on that power play, his point could continue.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the power play. He only saw 25% of the power play and hit 75 points. Can you imagine if he had more time on the power play, he'd be a point per game player. That's wild. Brandon Hagel. That's crazy. But look, he keeps doing it.
Well, he played very well in Chicago, too.
Yeah.
He was showing in Chicago that he was starting to break out before Tampa Bay picked him up.
And he had 75 points in 82 games last year, and the year before 64 and 81. So he's even like getting better and better as he's entering his prime. Over 2 shots a game, his shooting percentage is pretty fair. Whether at like a career average of 15, it's very fair. And on a team like Tampa, where they'll set up the play for you to have a great scoring chance, a great high scoring, high danger scoring chance. All he's got to do is put the puck in the net, and he's doing a great job at it. So, to me, I think we have him placed fairly here at tier 3, 70 to 79. I think he could keep going.
Tier 4, 60 to 69, we do not have any players placed. Would you guys have placed anybody on that tier?
So one thing about this team is, and we'll see it next team as well, is they're very top heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So Point, Gensel, Kucherov, of course, Hagel, and then there's really no one that could put up crazy points. But you have people that could put up some secondary scoring and people that could play very well defensively. That includes Anthony Cirelli. It includes Nick Paul. It includes Connor Sheary, right? Like
they signed Cam Atkinson.
Yeah. Do you see Cam Atkinson hitting 60 points?
Yeah, on a team like Tampa, who knows? I like Cirelli.
Mm-hmm.
I like Cirelli to take another step in his development. I don't think he'll ever be a 70 maybe point player, or maybe he'll get close. But I'd like to see him flirt with 60 this year. If he can get close to 60, and then next year obviously would be a step further in the 60s. But I'm curious to see how his development plays out. But they rely on him for a lot, right? Two-way center.
Well, and you were saying Cam Atkinson, he's been a paper, like loose leaf paper, right?
Yeah.
Recently, the guy is, I don't think he's ever played an 82-game schedule. Once. He played 82 games, once 81, once 80, but that's over like a 10-year career. So even more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12-year career. It's only 3 times he's played 80 games or more.
Yeah, but he plays 79, 78. It's his age is catching up to him, obviously.
He's he's going to be entering his 36-year season.
Exactly. So, but I agree with you. I think Anthony Cirelli, I think he can flirt with the 60 points this year if everything goes well. For the power play, for the defenseman,
I just don't see it.
He's
He's never hit 50 even. Or he hit once a point pace of 50. I just can't see 60 being possible.
No, I want to see him get close. I don't think he'll be, but I think in his prime he could be in his 60s.
Well, he's 27.
He's 27. He's
This
already
is
in
his
his
prime.
prime.
Man, things go fast, eh?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
So this is his prime. If he's gonna,
This
hit
is the
close-
year he needs to take
yeah,
that
of
leap.
course. Power play defenseman. I mean, there's no questions here. You know, Hedman's the number one defenseman there.
Yeah, we already spoke
this,
about that.
This is a team that plays their first unit for 1 minute and 45 seconds, if not 2 minutes. So, I mean, their second power play defenseman, we have Radish here, who could be there, who played a bit. J.J. Moser played a bit with the formerly
Coyotes.
known Arizona Coyotes. He played a bit of power play there. So, but I don't see them getting much power play time. So, I mean, unless you guys have something else, this team.
I'm
plays-
curious to see how they deploy Moser, actually, but I don't think he'll be fantasy relevant.
No, I don't think either of these guys will be fantasy relevant. The only thing that really interested me about Radish is the fact that he was like under $1 million
Yeah.
last year. But yeah, that's about it.
I think the next thing is where I think Tampa Bay might be better than last year, and it's in their goalie tandems, just because Andre Vasilevsky is coming in as a healthy body from the start. So Andre Vasilevsky last year save percentage .900, goes against 2.90, goals scored against expectations.
Goals saved. He doesn't score goals, but he saves
saved.
goals.
Oh, goals saved against
Above expected.
Above expected. Woo. 5-on-5, he was 62nd. Jonas Johansson. I think he started the year off a bit on fire, and everybody started picking him up on the waiver wire, and then realized.
No, someone will pick him up.
Well, I had Vasilevsky,
Yeah, I know.
and I needed whoever's playing Tampa games.
So save percentage .890, goes against 3.37. GSAE 5-on-5 55th. I mean, do you guys foresee Vasilevsky not playing 60 games or more this year? Or do you foresee Tampa Bay trying to get a better backup for him? Nick, you have Vasilevsky, or you had traded him. Still have him in one league.
Still have him.
Okay.
Can't keep track, too many leagues.
Way too many. I'm in 9 leagues. 9.
Don't forget the partial breakaway one after.
10 leagues. Anyways, so Vasilevsky, like you said, had no offseason. He was recovering from surgery.
Back injury.
Back injury. He came in cold, and it took him a long time to start producing good games. And his goal save above expected really showed that he was not doing very well. The team is so good around him that he still had decent save percentage and decent goals against average. But we're talking about a player who's, if you look at the micro stats, he just tanked last year. So I'm expecting a big bounce back year for him this year. And he's one of the few people that used to be tier 1 every single year. Tier 1 goalie, number 1 goalie you grab off the board every single year. Now I think that's turned into more of a Shesterkin type player. But we'll see Vasilevsky bounce back this year in a big, big way.
You'll notice he could be a league winner in redraft leagues because he's going to go a lot later than people expect. Not people expect. Like, people are putting him down because of his off year. But definitely a bounce back season. Look, coming off an injury, not a full off season. That, for a player, let alone a goalie, it's important, right? So, like Vince said, I think he hits the 60 games again. He's going to get his wins. His save percentage is going to be much better. His goals against average is going to be much better. Vasilevsky is Vasilevsky. He should still be in the tier 1 of goalies for sure.
Vesna, conversation for Vasilevsky this year, or
If they're serious contenders for the Stanley Cup, he needs to be, because I think they're lacking a bit in the back end there. But I think he could be in contention.
I really don't agree with you. I think they have a very good backhand. I think Chernak is an amazing defensive defenseman. I think McDonough is an amazing defensive defenseman, even though he's a little bit older now,
McDonough's
right?
like 37 years old.
Okay, but he still produces.
Still-
He's still defensively.
Yes, I'm just saying they
Like,
could
there.
use like a bit more offense from the back end. Look, if Edmund goes down, not a lot of depth there.
Like offensively,
but
they have the
that's-
number one power play
yeah,
in the league.
exactly.
It's hard to ask for more offense from their
And
D.
they have two players that were aiming to hit over 91 points. I mean, it's if they only get one guy back there that gets 70
I'm talking
points.
cup contention. Cup contention. They
It all
have to
depends on
improve a
Vasilevsky.
little bit.
I don't know.
But that's what I'm saying.
It all depends because there's other teams that have firepower as well, which we're going to talk about after.
Yeah.
Our last team of this entire thing.
So let's just go through the prospects of Tampa. Like we said, they've been competing for so
They have
long.
prospects.
Yeah, they don't have many. I mean, they have Connor Geeky, who's
Who
highly
they traded
touted.
for.
Yeah.
Who they traded for? So he's a
Sergachev.
highly touted prospect. Isaac Howard, Ethan Gauthier. I mean, the only interesting one here is Connor Geeky. Is he gonna get his like? Does he have a chance to get a cup of tea?
You think that's the only interesting one here?
You tell me, Nick.
No, Connor Geeky, I think, is gonna fight for a spot out of camp. I don't see him necessarily as a highly producing center, but because he is a center, but he could possibly
On the wing.
take that number 2 center spot eventually from Sorelli. He might be good enough for that at least. If everything hits, everything has to hit for that. I kind of see like, I don't know if it's going to be this year. I think this year he'll have a cup of coffee. Maybe if he makes it out of camp, he'll be their third line center for this year. But Nick Paul is there too, so maybe it's hard to really say. Maybe he's going to be a winger to start off the career. And they're lacking. I think their bottom six is not as good as it used to be. So maybe Connor Geeky is going to play left wing, right wing on that third line
Just
to give them a little bit of energy, a little
Maybe
bit
with
of,
Isaac Howard.
of youth. Isaac Howard, I think, is still a couple of years away. I like the kid though, and he's a goal scorer.
I thought for sure he had played a couple of games last year. I thought for sure he played a couple of games, but he didn't.
He did not. No, he did.
I like Connor Geeky. I think, especially on a team like this, he can be like a power play specialist. A lot of points on the power play because he has that gritty front net presence. But
Ethan Gauthier could turn into a middle six guy.
sorry, not Gauthier. Did I say Gauthier or
No, you
Geeky?
didn't. You said Geeky.
Okay, I said Geeky.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about Ethan Gauthier?
I was just gonna say, I think he could
Bottom
eventually
six.
turn into a middle six guy.
Yeah.
But he's still a few years away. I don't want to say that you're going to see him this year.
The most relevant ones are Howard and Geeky.
Final thoughts on Tampa Bay. Anything you guys want to add before I give you Dom's predictions?
I love the Gensel fit. I think that they bought themselves more years, a younger player than Stamkos, who could create on his own and still put up great points. Maybe not 40 goals, 40 assists like Stamkos used to, but still high up there in points and for many more years to come.
I think we're going to see a bit of a resurgence, if that's even possible, from the Tampa Bay Lightning this year.
I'm sad they didn't sign Stamkos, but I think more GMs should take
Their approach.
the approach that Breeze
Business
took.
approach.
Yeah, the business approach that they took instead of the emotional approach that most GMs like to take, including our Manchester.
And it actually
Nobody could get
it kind of
No,
happened where it was nice
Gallagher 6.25, 6.5.
a lot.
Yeah,
It-
Bergevin was.
It just
very
happened that
emotional.
like Stamkos went to a cup contending team and Tampa's still staying
Yeah,
relevant and
exactly.
young and bought years, like he said. So like I think it works out for everybody.
So the final thoughts on Dom's predictions. Stamkos and Sergachev out with Gensel and McDonough in. It saves about $1 million for the Tampa Bay Lightnings. They got slightly better according to the model. Gensel is younger and Sergachev was someone they could afford to lose. So basically, I mean, I don't see that Tampa Bay drops out of this playoff race. I think they actually go up there and try and fight for the first spot in this division. So that's the Tampa Bay Lightnings. Now, Nick, say it with pride, say it with energy. Make sure this has the most energy you've ever had on this podcast for Canada's team, Nick. Do it for Canada's team.
Can I mute him? Okay, so they're nowhere near Canada's team, but anyways. Remember when you said
You
that
got
we're
so
going to
distracted.
You remember when you said, "Oh, we're finally going to finish a podcast before midnight"? Toronto Maple Leafs. the Toronto Maple Leafs had 46 wins, 26 losses last year. We don't count overtime losses on this podcast because they are absolutely irrelevant. Last year's power play rankings, 7th in the league, 24% conversion rate, great numbers. And who's in, who's out? Well, in is Chris Tanev. In is OEL, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And in is Stolars. Out is Bertuzzi, out is Edmondson, out is Lyubushkin, and out is Samsonov. The player tiers, starting with 91 points and over, we have the maybe Wayne Gretzky future breaking of records, goal scoring in career, Austin Matthews.
He'll break Ovechkin's record because Ovechkin will beat Gretzky's record.
Right. Maybe. Anyways, Austin Matthews is our number 1 tier player. Recently got the captaincy.
And new.
And new captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. What do we think about Austin Matthews? Go Junior.
Again, these superstar players like this, it's hard to even say anything that people don't already know. He did have an increase in his shooting percentage last year at 18% compared to 12 the year before, which maybe led to 69 goals. I don't know if he's going to hit 70 or 69 again this year, but I think he's definitely going to get close to 60. 91 plus points for sure. I think he'll get close to 100 points.
I don't know. I think Caulfield and Laney can compete with him for the
For the
I
Rocket
thought you were going to bring the
Richard.
energy, but you're just bringing silliness.
No, those are the conversations on Twitter, and they're so silly. For a guy who scored 69 goals, like he should be compared to anybody.
No, zero.
Anybody.
I'll say one thing. We are so fascinated with the round numbers. Like, oh, he didn't hit 70.
Yeah.
Guys, he hit 69. It's the same
69
thing.
goals.
Like, let's be clear here. This guy is an absolute superstar.
He's an automatic, like, there's no...
Top 3 in the
be-
league,
besides-
fantasy-wise.
Besides Ovechkin, I believe there is no one else that you can say is an automatic 50 goal scorer.
Okay, Ovechkin in his prime, not
No,
Ovechkin
well,
now. Right?
In his career, Ovechkin has hit 50 almost every year.
One thing, I'm curious to see what the dynamic is as him with him as captain now. And at the end of the day, we're all human. No one likes to have their captaincy stripped away because essentially it was stripped away from Tavares. He's still there.
You think it was stripped away?
I find it hard to believe that a guy with as much pride and respect as Tavares has goes to the management and says, give him the captaincy on his line.
Who slept
Like,
in
what does it
Toronto
cha-
Maple Leafs pajamas? Who slept in them
Like,
when he was young?
What does it change? What does it change really in the dressing room? What does it change that Matthews went from an A to a C and Tavares went from a C? And I only see that possibly affecting them negatively if it affects them at all.
So here's the thing. The Toronto media has spin this, and they're very good at spinning. As you know, it was hinted to Tavares that eventually they wanted Matthews to be the captain. And Tavares took it upon himself to give up the captaincy to Matthews as the next in line.
The same way
I
give it
kind of feel like
upon myself to wash my dishes at home and not because my wife tells me to.
I'm just gonna read it. But in all honesty, like let's be fair here. Tavares kind of went over and beyond in his speeches. In his speech, saying how much he respects Matthews, how much this was not necessarily forced upon him, how he brought his children out in Austin Matthews with a letter C to help give the captaincy over, like a passing of the torch. All of that is positive. I think that plays a big role in my perception of Johnny Tavares, because in my perception, this guy is a class act because of the way that he did all this.
Because he followed the rules?
No, because he accepted to do it.
The fact is that it could have been a sulking, it could have been a screw you moment from John Tavares, and it wasn't. At least the way he presented himself, it wasn't. Now, do I think that this affects anything in terms of point production for Matthews, I don't think it affects anything at all. I don't think he is going to do less than 100 points this year because he has more pressure on him. I think this is all just other media throwing shade. If I'm being realistic, Matthews is still a 100-point player, and the rest of it is not fantasy relevant. We're just talking about it because it's fun to talk about.
It's a letter on the jersey.
Well, I think it has value.
I think it's important.
No,
it's just maybe
it's
not
important. But for anybody to believe that Tavares went there and said, "You know what? I believe I should be stripped of the captaincy," I think is ridiculous. Tavares, look at it realistically. Tavares was basically told, "This is what we're doing." If
and I
you
think
don't
he
like
bought.
it,
I think Tavares bought himself some years in Toronto because
I mean, he's
if you
gonna have
think
to
about
take a
it,
pay cut for sure.
you're fine. Yes, absolutely. But let's call a spade here. If he was your captain and his contract expired, you were giving it to Matthews anyways, the captaincy.
That's fine, though.
But if he didn't want to give up the captaincy, then he wouldn't be in Toronto next year. This way, at least they could bring him back at $5 million, $6 million.
Oof, no, he's
I'm not saying he didn't accept it. I'm just saying I'm sure it stung when it first came up. And look,
He's a proud player.
Obviously, he accepted it, and he's doing his best to make it seem like, he has no choice to be proud of Matthews and bring all that. And maybe part of him does feel proud for Matthews and wanted to do it for Matthews. But no one in their right mind will ever want to have it stripped away from them to give to someone else as much as they're deserving. But the last thing I'll say, and then we can move on from this captaincy thing, is this: if they come out at the gate like losing 4 straight and like they face adversity right away, like that's when all that media attention that's not needed is going to be there. But I think every time they hit a stall,
I think that's good because, guys, Toronto, and this is again, we're still not going into fantasy stuff, but Toronto comes out of the gate not playing well. They face adversity right off the bat. That's great for Toronto. Toronto has cruised to top 3 finishes in the division every single year. So they go into the playoffs and they only start hitting adversity when they're actually in the playoffs. It's not the place that you want to start learning how to deal with adversity.
I mean, year after year, you would think they learned something, but
okay. But what I'm saying is that teams have to lose before they win, and Toronto. Anyways, we'll talk about what I think they're going to do, but I think they're better set up this year than they've ever been before. Even though they're running it back again with the same core, that's not what I'm talking about. I still think they're the best team possibly that they've hit on is this year. Now, let's talk about the next player that almost hit 100 points, but he actually hit 98, and that was William Nylander.
Mm-hmm.
William Nylander Jr., can he repeat 91 plus, and should he be in our tier 1 again this year?
I think so. I think he can. I think he's closer to 91 than he is, like, let's say 100. I think he could do it. He had an increase in shots on goal last year. His shooting percentages have been pretty stable across the line. 40 goal scorer. I think that's fair to predict again. Yeah, he could get close to 100 points, but yeah, 91 plus. I think 91 plus points is very fair. 40 goals, I think, is capping him. I think he lives between 35 and 40 there. Yeah, look, Nylander has produced ever since he's come in this league, pretty much. I don't expect anything less. I own him, so I sure hope he hits more than 100 points, but I'll go on the safe side and predict that he'll be closer to 91 than 100.
No, like, I mean, he's proven he can score 40 goals, 34, 40, 40 goals, 80, 87, 98 points. He's in his prime, 28 years old. He'll be fine. He'll be in the 91 and plus points.
And, like, new coach has a lot to do with projecting here. He didn't play much of his time with Matthews or Marner, right? He was always on that second line with maybe Domi or Tavares, Matthew Nyes. So I'm curious to see what Berube does with this roster and who he splits and who he puts together. And I'm sure he's going to want to put his fingerprint on this team.
If I'm going to predict anything about Berube, is that he will play his hardest working players. because that's what he loves. He loves hardworking players. He's a rah guy. This is the type of coach that he is. Is that necessarily better than Sheldon Keefe? We'll see. Only time will tell. We don't know that. But William Nylander is a hardworking player who has all the talent in the world, and he's shown it the last 3 years. Since entering his prime, he's been, like we said, on pace over 80 points every single year. So I like his projection here at 91. I don't think he hits 100, but that 91 plus, he's very capable of hitting. The other person that maybe should be in the 91 plus but isn't,
Yeah, why isn't he?
Yeah, that's
is Mitch Marner. And the reason why I put him in the 80 to 90 point turnaround is simply because of the fact that
Berube's coach,
Berube's coach.
right? I knew it. Had 4 consecutive years at 100 points pace. Like, that's wild, man. We're gonna put him down. The coach is gonna deploy him so he doesn't get 100 points.
Look, I'm just.
No,
it's a talking point.
You're not
more
the
than
only
anything.
one with that take. That take is everywhere.
Yeah.
He's the scapegoat every single year. This guy.
it's because Toronto fans don't want him to hit 100 points because then they're gonna have to pay him like a 100-point player, and they can't.
They're already
afford
paying him 100-point player. He's at
but
11
his
something
contract-
million.
His contract's up, no?
Yeah, but I don't
Guys,
think
how
he's
many
gonna get-
teams in the NHL
Have 300-point
have
players.
3 players that are hitting almost 100
Fucking
points?
ridiculous.
Like-
For Toronto fans who
Explicit.
bitch and complain,
I could.
we're happy with a fucking 80-point player.
All right,
These
the
guys
fucks
have
are out of the
3.
bag.
These guys have 3 potential 100 and over point players, and you still hear fans bitch and complain.
You just wanted us to get going with that stupid tier.
man.
Jesus.
Yeah, so okay. I mean, 91 plus points, I think, is very, very on mark for Marner. On pace for 100 points every single year, like we said.
On a contract year this year, put it in the bag. 100 points.
It's interesting. It's interesting that they were really discussing getting rid of him this offseason in order to make a change to the core, and he was the guy. And a big reason for that is because of his playoff performance. Not that he doesn't put up points in the playoffs, because we looked at that together, right? And we said he's actually putting as many points as some of these other
Out
stars.
of the core guys, he has the most points per game in the playoffs.
It's the fact that he plays a very perimeter game. And the one time that he cut in front of the net, he scored a goal from his knees this playoffs. So he has the ability, he has the talent. He's more of a setup guy than a goal scorer, and he does it extremely well. Toronto's going to be so fun to watch again this year.
You know, you say he's more of a playmaker than a scorer, but he still scores over 30 goals a year, practically. Man,
Toronto fans.
Embarrassment of riches.
Yes.
embarrassment of riches. And I get the frustration because you have all that you
that's-
want to win, right?
But for once, they actually got what they needed to go far into the playoffs.
Yes, okay, we're going to get there. So,
You want to talk about the next player?
We're talking about Marner here. All right.
But
So,
you put in like tier 2.
Two,
and
it
you're
should have been
supposed to
tier
be
1. Even
It-
before
it got you
Nylander.
talking, no?
Even before Nylander, he should have been
It got
tier
you
1.
talking.
Yeah, like Nylander
okay,
never.
do
hit
we have
100.
anybody in tier 3? So this part I'm very, very
How do
curious
you not
about.
have Matthew Nyes in tier 2? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. The next player I want to talk about is John Tavares.
Who should be in tier 3?
And the reason why I'm talking about John Tavares is because last year you kind of saw him take a step back. And it's not that he didn't score 29 goals. Yeah, that's great. It's the fact that he only hit 65 points last year, which was on pace for 67 on a full 82-game schedule. So he went from 82 the previous year, 79, 78, 73, and he's hitting his 34 age season. Do we think that Tavares is going back to that 70-point pace, or is he more of that? Is he starting to drop a little bit?
I feel the sea was holding him back. So now that
It carried too much
it
weight.
would carry too much weight, so now that it's off his chest voluntarily, he's gonna hit 70. This is the fuck you season to Toronto for him this year. This is what it is. This is Tavares' big middle finger to Toronto, saying yeah, you wanted me to participate in this scripted, I don't want to be captain anymore. Fine, I'll participate. But when I put up 75 points to 80 points this year, you can take the middle finger if you want to pay me $5 million next year.
Toronto fans at Vince DiBiase.
No, but
He doesn't even have a Twitter
all
or an X.
all
He doesn't
Toronto
even have-
fans, listen, fantasy wise, at $11 million, do you take Tavares? No.
Well, I mean,
probably-
some would argue. Some would argue.
At $11 million, it's a hard hit. But
He was a free agent at the time. They had to kind of
No,
overpay him,
exactly.
but it's
But-
unfortunate
But
that
for people
they
to
did.
say that, oh, he's there's no this season is his middle finger to Toronto saying, listen to me, I'm gonna put up 75 to 80 points, and then when you come up to me and say, oh, do you gonna take a hometown discount? That's the middle finger he's gonna give them because he's gonna say no. That's my prediction.
The biggest difference from last year to from 2022 to 2023 season to the 23-24 season was his power play points. He had 19 less power play points last year. You add that, and he's pretty much a point per game player. So
why did he have less power play points?
that's what I was looking at. Like the percentage of power play time he got was more or less the same, 69, 66. He had a lull in the season, Tavares. I think it was the third quarter of the season where he didn't get many points and he lost power play time as well. But other than that, I'm not sure. Maybe like the power play, the way it worked, didn't work around him, and so he saw less opportunity on the ice. Like when he was on the ice, less opportunity to get points because he's not the type of player that the power play doesn't go through him, right? It's always on Nylander's stick, Matthews' stick, and Marner, right? And then if there's rebounds in front of the net, when you have a sharp shooter like Nylander and Nylander and Matthews, you don't get a lot of rebounds. So because they find the back of the net, especially if he's going to score 69 a season.
I think he was playing bumper spot most of the year.
Yeah, and
I think Bertuzzi was playing net front, if I'm not mistaken.
I see him possibly hitting 70 points again, Tavares.
Perfect. So, next, we have Morgan Riley, who is in our tier 4 between 60 to 69 points. Guys, what do we think about Morgan Riley? Hey, is he a number 1 defenseman? Junior.
Oh, please don't say it.
Oh, yeah. I want hate messages.
No, he's not a number 1 defenseman, but he'd be a great first pairing defenseman if he could be combined with a number 1 defenseman. Like if he was on a line with Hedman, first pairing, that would be a fantastic first pairing. That doesn't discredit him. It's not to say he's not a bad player. He's a really good player. He's a really good player. I never expect him to do that well in terms of points, and he always does. And that's credit to him and not so much to me. But he did lose power play time last year a little bit. He went from 64% of the power play to 57%. I wonder if they give Lygren a bit more of a chance this year, or is it OEL that snips away at that? I just find they could use a better quarterback on that power play, but maybe someone with a better shot.
I think they tried with Klingberg, and Klingberg got injured right off the bat, and he was done. And then they tried, I think, with who was it? Gustafsson? Who was?
Yeah,
they had
Gustafsson
for a song and a dance. But yeah, they haven't really found that number 2 Sandin. They got rid of, right? So they haven't had that other offensive. Liljegren, from everything that I'm hearing from the Toronto fans that we speak to, that are part of our leagues, they're not sold on him even being worth $3 million contract that he got. So it doesn't give me a lot of confidence to say he's going to be a power play guy.
Riley's pacing on 82 game pace in the last 3 years. He has an average of 63 points.
Yeah, he's going to get... There's no one on this team that's going to take his time on ice or his power play 1 points. Like I said, Toronto made good moves on defense, but I was more talking about their defensive defensemen
as a unit,
offensive defensemen. Because I think actually this might be a breakout year for O'Reilly because he's got that support now defensively that he doesn't have to try to play both ways, and he could let himself go offensively if Berube permits. Because Berube, we've known he's an old school defense first guy, so we'll see what kind of system he brings into this team. and what kind of character he brings in. But I think this could be a breakout year for Morgan Riley because of the backing he has defensively from his defensive pair.
Do you guys fear to a certain extent that if he makes too much of a change to a system that this could like be a dumpster fire?
Not at all.
Berube?
Yeah.
I don't think Berube
Because
could do
Keith
anything.
and Berube don't have very similar styles, right? So like,
Look, even if the Toronto Maple Leafs lose a few more games, I think they're better set up for the playoffs. And I think that's why
if you look
Berube
at it
came
that
in,
way.
right? So, and we'll talk about a little bit the next part, which is going to be a little bit of the asterisks. But before I get there, we spoke about power play D-man. We spoke about Morgan Riley, who Vince calls O'Reilly.
Because I was looking at O'Reilly with Nashville and with St. Louis when Berube.
Excuses. OEL is the other defenseman that came in this year, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He played some power play time in Florida last year when Ekblad got injured. Do we think Oliver Ekman-Larsson will have a decent season for a defenseman?
Really? Nick? Okay.
This guy's takes, I swear.
Okay. I'll tell you power play 1 unit and then power play 2 unit. And then you tell me if the power play 2 unit will ever exist on the ice, okay? Power play 1 unit. Mitch Marner, Tavares, Nylander, Riley, Matthews. Power play 2. Nyes, Domi, Youngkrok, Lindgren, and Ekman-Larsson.
Lingerie.
Like, come on. How can you not tell me that this power play 1 is going to play 1 minute and 55 seconds and the second unit is just going to come on when the puck gets cleared?
Okay.
There is no second defenseman power play for this team.
So,
I don't think OEL is very, very fantasy relevant.
No.
okay. Good defenseman, but maybe not fantasy relevant.
Yeah, serviceable for the Leafs this year for sure.
Do we have anybody else on this lineup, that we think could flirt with 60 points?
Do you want me to piss you off?
Go ahead. You do every podcast anyways.
Bobby McCann. Bobby McCann.
McMahon. 'Cause,
No, there's nobody that's gonna flirt to the 60. I'm guessing Toronto Maple Leaf fans hope that Nice can get close to 60. But I don't see. Like we said with the last team, this team is very top heavy, so they're gonna be very dependent on those players.
I think Max Domi could get close.
Ooh,
I think Max Domi could get close. He had a great end to the season, 16 points in 19 games. I think if he could build off that, stay healthy, now that he has his contract, he gets some good deployment. He averaged only 13 minutes of ice time, but in that final quarter, he was given 15.29. So it's much better, but it wasn't with Berube. If he can limit the brain farts, Berube will like him a lot. If he doesn't limit the brain farts, then he's going to be in Berube's doghouse.
So Matthew Nyes is only 21 years old, turning 22 before the season starts. Only played 83 games in his career so far. So he's only been around really one season where he put up 35 points. He's still a prospect, technically. No Bertuzzi this year. So no Bertuzzi might mean Matthew Nyes playing on the top line. Maybe top 6 for sure, I think. He doesn't have necessarily the offensive pedigree or the like crazy offensive skills, but I think he could replicate a Todd Bertuzzi. So we'll see if he hits maybe 50 points this year, but I don't see 60 necessarily for this year.
If he stays on the top line with Matthews and Marner, he'll get his 3 points on that line.
There should be progress for sure.
Progress for sure.
For sure.
So, guys, the big asterisk this season, and the only thing that scares me this season for the Toronto Maple Leafs,
huge asterisks,
is their goaltender. And not because their goaltending is bad. Guys, don't get me wrong. Joseph Woll is a very good goalie. And I think Stoli, the goalie, when they grabbed Anthony Stolarz, is a very smart get And probably because of the fact that they look at a lot at the analytics like goal save above expected. So let's just run over the stats very quickly before I leave it to you guys. Joseph Woll had a 907 save percentage, 2.94 goals against average. He was 40th in goal save above expected. Anthony Stolars comes in, 925, played a lot less games. 925 save percentage, 2.03 goals against average. Goal save above expected, second in the league. So, do we think this tandem is an upgrade over the Samsonov-Woll tandem? Do we think this tandem is good enough to possibly win more games or win a cup? What are we thinking?
Stolar's actually played more games than Woll.
I just want to make sure we have the same stats.
This laptop was created in the 80s. In the early 90s, okay?
No, Stolar's had 2.03 goals against average last year with Florida and a 925 save percentage. Woll had 907 and a 294 goals against average. Stolar's played 27 games and Woll only 25. Woll has never played more than 25 games in a season, and now he's expected to be a number one goalie on a team that's expected to win the cup. That's a lot. That's a lot of weight on that guy's shoulders. So I'm glad they went to get a guy like Stolar's. I don't know, man. Guys, in a perfect world, this has to be. You kind of almost have to do a 1A, 1B until like Woll gains that stamina to play 50 to 60 games. Like, how can you just give him that? I don't think it's fair to assume Woll plays 50 games this year.
I think Woll. Let me go with what your thoughts first.
I'm shocked that I thought he played more than 36 games in his career. I'm shocked that he only played 36 games, and I'm even more worried now than I was before with this goalie tandem, because at least backing him up, listen, we can say whatever we want about Samsonov, but he had experience in the NHL as a first goalie. Now you got you got Woll, who you're hoping is your first, and then Stolars, who's been a career backup, let's say.
Yeah.
So this is worrisome. This and Woll coming off of an injury last year.
Well, that's been the problem with Woll his whole career, is that he's always been seasons cut short due to injury.
Like, who's their third goalie if he goes down?
So Matt Murray.
Matt Murray is still there.
He's still there.
Yeah. And he's
And
coming. He's going to be fully healthy.
I think that's why they're a little bit less worried, because Woll, even if he doesn't stay healthy the entire time, has the ability to be backed up by Matt Murray, who was a regular starter for a very long time.
That guy's been on CSST for the longest time. Jesus.
If our American listeners don't understand what CSST is, it's injured leave,
essentially.
work leave.
Jesus. But yes, this is the. But okay, this is what I'm gonna say about Toronto.
Just the Quebec thing.
I think it's just a Quebec thing.
No,
Okay.
it's also, is it? No.
CSNST is the Quebec.
It's the Quebec one.
So this worries me, but the pickup they did in defense kind of helps with Tanev, with OEL being defensively sound. But this is still like you're going in basically with a rookie goaltender, 36 games played.
Yep, and a career backup.
Wow.
I mean, it's
But
not the end of the world.
Both
but
guys had very good numbers as well. So it's
yeah, he just look. If Woll stays healthy with the improvement they made as a defensive unit, I think that could go a long way.
I think if Woll stays
And-
healthy, you're not worried at all, regardless of the defensive.
And guys, cap wise, under $1 million this year in cap leagues, Woll is like a no brainer.
Okay.
Even for next year, $3.1 million extension
Okay,
over
but
3 years.
it doesn't worry you that you're expecting Woll to play 55 to 60 games?
No, I think they got Stolar.
Plus-
I think they got Stolar.
I think they're going to give him 1A, 1B, 41.
Yeah, or Murray
If-
might
if
even
they stay
come
healthy.
in.
Murray
Murray
could-
might even come in and play 10,
Because
15
if you're
games.
expecting him to play 50 to 55 games, then you're expecting a long playoff run. This guy's not going to make it.
I think a lot of what Berube
That's a
does
lot
with
of
his system
games.
is gonna determine that.
So they did bring in Chris Tanev. They did bring in Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Which are beautiful pickups for them.
Jake McCabe, that helps bring Jake McCabe down to maybe a third pairing, which is still phenomenal. I think this is the best team that they've iced in a very, very long time. I think Berube coming in is a fresh face. They needed a fresh face. I know it's not the change that Toronto fans were really hoping for, but I'm very curious this year to see what Toronto does. I think it's one of the best years. We could touch on the prospects before we go. Do we think Easton Cowan is going to play any NHL games this year?
I think Minton might be closer to playing more games than Cowan.
Cup of coffees or
No.
Minton, I think in the second half of the season might have a more prominent role, but Cowan in the future is definitely going to have a spot there for sure.
yeah, I see both.
I just don't think I'm ready just yet.
Yeah, I don't see. I both of them might have some games played this year. I just don't see them having full seasons in the NHL necessarily. I like both of these players to be middle six contributors for this team moving forward. Just maybe not necessarily fantasy relevant for this year. Topi Nimela, Danford, those are two other players. Danford they just drafted this year. Still maybe a ways away, but that could be... Even, I think Nimela might have a cup of coffee as well. Can you see where Nimela played last year?
Yeah. Where is he?
When I was looking at it, I just want to make sure
hold on.
that... Here, Topi Nimela
Where's
is
the
a
depth chart?
defenseman, 22 years old. Yeah, he played with the Marlies last year, put up 39 points in 68 games. So he might be another one of those players that makes the team out of camp. We'll see. He came over from Karpat.
Be a nice surprise. But look, I think Minton and Cowan are your most prominent prospects.
Yeah.
You're good?
I'm
All right.
good. That's all I got to say there, Nick. I think I've said enough over 2.5 hours here.
Well, guys, Dom's model predicts that, or Dom's model said that they had the 8th best offseason. Yes, they're running it back again, but they finally have a top pairing defensive defenseman to put with Morgan Riley in Chris Tanev. Obviously, this is somebody that their GM is very familiar with, and I think he's bringing in his players. OEL is better than Lyubushkin and Edmondson, so Chris Tanev is better than them as well. And they had a phenomenal season. Like, Stolarz had a phenomenal season last year. It's just in a backup role. So let's see if we give him more opportunity, what he could do. Much stronger defensive group in the back, but maybe didn't replace Bertuzzi, might hurt a little bit up front.
I feel this team will regress in the season, but once playoff comes, that's where you're going to see these signings really lift them to hopefully the next step.
I'm curious to see how the Nick Robertson saga ends. Still unsigned.
He's asked for a trade.
Yeah, but that doesn't always come to fruition. We've seen players get stuck. Look at DeBrusque. He's asked for 2 trades out of Boston and was never granted that wish. You don't know. And it's a shame because I think he has the talent to be a full-timer on this team at a very cheap cap hit. But I'm not sure what's going on there. But anyhow, look, it'll be a fun season. I think there's a lot of change in Toronto, so it'll be fun to see how everything plays out. And look, it's always a circus with the media, right? So the second something goes a little astray, they're going to come up with something to make it bigger than it is.
I watched a lot of Toronto games last year.
But yeah, me too. Just
They're entertaining hockey.
and you want to watch Matthews score.
Yeah.
You just want to keep watching Matthews score. And never again will I take Jack Hughes over Matthews in a fantasy league. Non-dynasty.
I remember that.
That does it for me, guys.
I almost didn't do the podcast with you. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we tried bringing the energy today. It was very important teams, even though it started with a very big tragedy During the week started with a very big tragedy before we even started this podcast. So we wanted to mention support for Johnny and Matthew Goudreau. Baby Trip. They have a GoFundMe going on for Madeline and Baby Trip after the tragedy. So if you guys are interested in that, you could look up the
GoFundMe. Their goal was to raise
it's
30,000.
tough to talk about. But
Their goal was to raise 30,000, and they're at 491,000.
Good for them.
Yeah. And
Unborn Baby Trip, in case
unborn
don't know the
child
story.
that never got to meet his father. Guys, another place, an alternative, if you don't like GoFundMe and you want somewhere else to try to support this MAD Canada, MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It's a great place to donate as well. So we just wanted to throw that in there. Our sympathies again with the family and the entire Goudreau family. Anybody else want to talk?
Well, I just want to say thank you to the listeners. This wraps up our team previews. The last couple of episodes went over 2 hours long, but our listeners survived, lasted and listened. So thank you to them. Thank you to Sportira for our apparel. If you want to follow them on Instagram, it's sportira.apparel. What else do we use? Thank you to Daily Faceoff, Cap Wages.
Frozen Tools.
Also, a reminder to listeners that we cut our videos individually to teams. So if you don't have the whole time to listen to the whole podcast, you just want to listen
On YouTube.
to specific teams on YouTube, we have that.
Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. It really helps us. A 5-star
special
review.
guest next week.
Special guest next week.
Can we
Special
announce the
episode
name?
Yeah, of course you have
Yeah,
to
of
announce
course.
it.
All right. So we have Victor Nuno coming on.
from Dauber Prospect
from Dauber
reporting.
Prospect and EP Ringside, Elite Prospects.
And Daily
Contributor.
Fantasy Hockey Life podcast too?
Fantasy Hockey Life podcast.
He's everywhere.
He's everywhere, basically.
He also does the Dauber Prospects Report podcast. And we joined his league on Dauber Prospect
we're
Report,
really
right?
excited. We're
So
really excited.
We're
It's going to be a
This is
good
our
episode.
Biggest
And-
guest we've had.
And if you guys have any questions
Bingo.
for him, feel free to write them in the YouTube comments. We'll try to get it to him as many questions as possible.
You can email us as well at
Oh,
our
there you go.
email.
And lastly, very important to subscribe to YouTube and to follow us on our social medias, because our eventual fantasy league this year, whatever we decide to do, we're working on it. The listeners will have to be subscribed or following in order to take part.
We're
Correct?
still working on
We're
that.
still working on
We're working on it,
It's-
but that's what has to
it's a
happen to be
work
part of
in
it.
progress.
That's a given.
We'll keep you guys posted on that one. Everybody, it's been a long
Let's
night.
be a fantasy hockey
Have a
podcast with
good-
no fantasy.
have a good
All right,
beginning of the
let's do
week.
that. Let's go.